nìkan mọ̀lẹ́ èrò pawọ́pọ̀ wọn máa yíyan ọmọ Yorùbá ẹ̀jìgìrì kàwé Yorùbá ṣègùté ògo 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 kàwé Yorùbá ṣègùté ògo. Dìde gbogbo ẹyẹ má pa kárin kése ní.
Ọjọ́ bá pẹ́ títí ọjọ́ àpín o, bọ́nà bá jìnnà jìnnà àdópin o. Àti sáré àdópin aré, àtàtìjìyà àdópin ìyà o. Àti súnsún àti kan ògiri, ó má ti fẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o.
Ilé òní gbóná kárẹ̀ ju omi kọ́lé, ayé òní kóró kálọ̀ dífá ọ̀run wò. Láyé náà la ó wà, títà ó fi ṣẹ́gun lójú àwọn ọlọ́tẹ̀. Ẹkún àkọjá òkùnkùn ájímọ́lẹ̀ fáwa ọmọ Yorùbá, ọjọ́ ayọ̀ súnmọ́lé o.
Láyé kan gbá ó mà di láyé kan gbá Yorùbá ò ní dọ̀bálẹ̀ ẹ̀fẹ́ nìkan ó di gbẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o.
Yé ẹ dìde dìde bí ológun ẹ bá jàgà sílẹ̀ o ẹ rántí àtọmọdọ́mọ kò ní sún wa kò ní rẹ̀ wá tá ó fi ṣẹ́gun ẹni tó dé ó sànjú ẹni tirẹ̀ ń bọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ò ní ní dúró kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n 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 àtùpàgbé onígbọ̀n yóò bí ẹ bá sùn ẹgbẹ́ ọjọ́ ayọ̀ súnmọ́lé o.
Mo kó nílé mo kálejò mo kí lọ́kùnrin bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí lóbìnrin onílé mo kágò kí n tó wọlé torí pé ewúrẹ́ tó wọlé tí ò kágò irú wọn adẹrun àmúso bágùtàn bá wọlé bí ò kágò irú wọn adẹrun àmúso ni èmi ò fẹ́ dewúrẹ́ tàmúso mi sì fẹ́ dàgùtàn tàmúso torí ẹ̀ ni mo ṣe kí onílé tí mo kágò bàbá mo kágò ìyanu léyìí mo kí yín káàbọ̀ sórí ètò bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ TV mo kí lọ́balọ́ba lẹ̀ Yorùbá mo kí lóyè lẹ̀ Yorùbá mo kí ládéládé mo kí lóyè mo súnmọ́ ba níwọ̀n ẹgbèje mo jìnnà sọ́ba níwọ̀n ẹgbẹ̀fà nítorí pé àrọ́bàfin lọ́ba ń pa èmi ò sí nínú àrọ́bàfin o mi ò sì sí nínú bọ́ba mo wá ṣe ládùúgbà pé gbogbo ọba aládé ilẹ̀ Yorùbá pátá adé apẹ́ lórí o bàtà apẹ́ lẹ́sẹ̀ èjìgbàlẹ̀kẹ̀ apẹ́ lọ́rùn àwọn olórí wọ́n ṣiṣẹ́ ìbí lágbára Olódùmarè mo kí gbogbo ojú tó ń wò mí káàkiri gbogbo ayé ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ọmọ Yorùbá tẹ́ ń wò mí nílùú Nàìjíríà mo kí yín o ẹ̀yin ọmọ Yorùbá àtàtà tẹ́ ń wò mí lérékùṣù Áfíríkà mo kí yín ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ń wò mí káàkiri òkè òkun gbogbo yín náà ni mo kí bákan náà mo kẹ́yìn ti Amẹ́ríkà mo kẹ́yìn ti London mo kẹ́yìn ti Canada mo kẹ́yìn tẹ́ wà l'Asian countries káàkiri gbogbo yín náà ni mo kí o ẹ̀yin tẹ́ wà l'Australia mi ò kúkú gbàgbé yín ojú tẹ́ fi ń wò mí yóò wá ní fọ́ lágbára Olódùmarè etí tẹ́ sì fi ń gbọ́ mi etí náà ò ní di lágbára Olódùmarè èmi ọmọ yín náà rèé Aláwìyé Adébáyọ̀ Sábúrì ọmọ bàbá tíṣà lábẹ́kúta olóòtú ètò bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ ẹ ṣe jẹ́ wá nǹkan fìdílé lónìí àbí ká fìdílé nǹkan kájọ túkọ̀ ètò tèní kájọ gbé ọkọ̀ náà sójú agbami ẹ jẹ́ àjọ jẹ̀gbádùn ètò tòní ẹ bá mi ké sálára ẹ ké sàjèrò ẹ ké sọ̀wọ́ ọ̀rọ̀gún àga kẹ ẹ ké sọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀gbìn ilé ìlà kẹ ẹ sọ fún wọn wípé gbàgede ìmọ̀ ti jáde. tó ẹ jẹ́ n kọ́kọ́ máa fi eléyìí ṣèwọlé wípé gbogbo ojú tí ń wò mí pátápátá tí ẹ wà nínú bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ TV tẹ wà nínú ṣánẹ́ẹ̀lì yìí tó jẹ́ kẹ́yìn kàn wá wò ó kẹ́sì jáde bẹ́ẹ̀ ni tí ẹ ò tí ì subscribe fún wa ẹ ṣe jẹ́ aṣọ dàmọ̀pọ̀ lénìí kẹ́yìn náà ò jẹ́ ṣe àwòdà nínú ètò bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ tí a wà yìí kẹ́yìn náà buwọ́ lu ibi tí wọ́n kọ subscribe sí ẹ tẹ̀ àti pé àmì aago kan wà ní ẹ̀gbẹ́ subscribe ń bẹ̀ ẹ rí tí wọ́n ya bí aago báyìí ẹ kílíkì lórí òun náà èyí ni wọ́n ń pè ní notification bell. ìgbàkígbà tí n bá ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ fídíò tàbí mo gbé fídíò kan jáde kò nídìí kẹ́sẹ̀ máa fi fóònù pè mí wípé bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ kí ni latest, kò nídìí mọ́. tẹ́ bá ti tẹ notification bell lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀ tí bá ti ju fídíò síta àbí mo ṣe live ni ẹ máa rí wò ní lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀ torí wọ́n á gbé notification wá fún yín pé bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ tó ti wà níta. ẹ pẹ́ yín tẹ́ ń wò mí látòrí Facebook oríṣiríṣi àwọn èèyàn ni wọ́n ti ń gbéṣẹ́ mi kiri lórí Facebook nsìn. kẹ́ ẹ tó wo ètò yìí lórí Facebook ẹ ṣáà wo òkè ẹ wo kí ni péèjì wo ni wọ́n kọ síbẹ̀ tó bá ti yàtọ̀ sí gbàgede ìmọ̀ with aláwìyé báyọ̀ tó bá ti yàtọ̀ sí eléyìí ẹ mọ̀ pé àwọn tó jíṣẹ́ mi gbé ni ẹ rọra yọra yín kò ń bẹ̀ kẹ́ ẹ sì bá mi rìpọ́ọ̀tù ṣánẹ́ẹ̀lì yẹn kódà lórí YouTube náà tí ẹ bá ti wo fídíò yìí lórí YouTube tó bá ti yàtọ̀ sí gbàgede ìmọ̀ channel tó bá ti yàtọ̀ sí bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ TV any channel tẹ́ bá ti rí fídíò yìí ẹ rìpọ́ọ̀tù ẹ̀ àti rìpọ́ọ̀tù ò le ẹ ṣàwò ẹ̀gbẹ́ ìlà tí wọ́n fà yẹn ẹ tẹ̀ ẹ ráyè rìpọ́ọ̀tù bẹ́ẹ̀ rìpọ́ọ̀tù ẹ̀ láìpẹ́ téèyàn 100 péré bá rìpọ́ọ̀tù fídíò wọ́n máa gba channel yẹn lọ́wọ́ wọn ni oríṣiríṣi àwọn èèyàn ni wọ́n ń gbéṣẹ́ mi. ẹ má jẹ́ ká sọ iléyá ká má sọ dìlé pẹ́ lónìí. ẹ jẹ́ kí n bẹ̀rẹ̀ látòrí Gúnmi tó ẹ má jẹ́ ká sọ ilé pẹ́ ká má sọ iléyá ká má sọ dìlé pẹ́ lónìí. ẹ jẹ́ á bẹ̀rẹ̀ látòrí Gúnmi. àwọn ọmọ Ìgbòho àti àwọn ọmọ ilẹ̀ Yorùbá wọ́n mà ti yarí lórí ọ̀rọ̀ Gúnmi tó wá sí Ìgbòho. àkọ́kọ́ náà mo jẹ́ kó yé wa lánàá wípé ọ̀nà ẹ̀bùrú ni Gúnmi gbà wọlé. Gúnmi ò sì kọ́ba kò kíjòyè kò kí aráàlú kankan kò sẹ́nikẹ́ni pàápàá tó tiẹ̀ kọ́kọ́ mọ̀ pé Gúnmi wà nílùú. ó yọ wọlé ni ó sì tún yọ jáde. mo sì sọ fún wa àwọn nǹkan tí Gúnmi wá ṣe implication fídíò tó record. nǹkan méjì ló lè torí ẹ̀ rìkọ́ọ̀dù fídíò yìí. àkọ́kọ́ nítorí 1 million march tí wọ́n fẹ́ ṣe ní Amẹ́ríkà. tẹ́ ẹ bá gbàgbé ẹ rí i pé chief of staff ti Mr. President ó ti wà chief of staff of the Federation ó ti wà ní Amẹ́ríkà pẹ̀lú àwọn entourage ẹ̀ wọ́n ti wà l'Amẹ́ríkà lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí láti lọ́ọ́ káńtà 1 million march táwọn ọmọ Yorùbá àtàwọn ọmọ Niners generally fẹ́ ṣe ní United Nations House nígbà tí wọ́n bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ 72 summit tí wọ́n fẹ́ ṣe ní on the 14th to 28th. fídíò tí Gúnmi wá ṣe yìí èmi jókòó mo rò wípé ara nǹkan tí wọ́n fẹ́ lò láti fi káńtà àwọn ọmọ Yorùbá tó fẹ́ ṣe 1 million march ó ní Gúnmi wá dọ́gbọ́n ṣe bí ìṣẹ́jú méjì láti fi hàn gbogbo ayé wípé kódà ìlú Sunday Igboho tó jẹ́ pé òun ló ń champion Yorubanation ìlú ẹ̀ làwọn wà yìí o tóun fi wọlé tóun fi ń ṣe tóun ṣe yìí kò sí wàhálà kankan ló ṣe mọ̀ọ́mọ̀ rìkọ́ọ̀dù ẹni tó ń da ẹran jẹ wípé kódà àwọn Fúlàní dẹran níbẹ̀ yìí sílì gbogbo 1 million march tó ń ṣe yìí àwọn diaspora ló ń dà lúrú n tó plan láti ṣe. number 1 nìyẹn. number 2 ni pé ọ̀rọ̀ kan tún sọ pé gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n lé gbogbo àwọn Boko Haram tán láwọn repentant Boko Haram àtàwọn bandits tí wọ́n lé kiri nílẹ̀ Haúsá tí wọ́n láwọn ò fẹ́ rí wọn mọ́ pé gbogbo ẹ̀yin agbé nípa ẹ̀yin Fúlàní yẹn kó Olúwa wọ́n ní gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n lé yìí wọ́n ní Gúnmi fẹ́ wá rí establish wọn sí àwọn Ìbàràpá wọ́n ní Ìbàràpá ló fẹ́ jẹ́ kí wọ́n máa wá gbé ní ìsìn ó wá ń bá wọn wólẹ̀ wò làwọn tó ṣe èyíkéyìí tó bá jẹ́ ń bẹ̀ ìgbésẹ̀ tẹ̀yìn ọmọ Ìgbòho ń gbé inú mi dùn torí pé Yorùbá sọ pé ẹnikẹ́ni tó bá finá sórí òrùlé sùn wọ́n ní pé tí ilé náà ó fi jó fọnfọnfọn lèyìn ó máa sùn ni. àwọn ará Ìgbòho àti Yorùbá míì náà ní Ìbàràpá papọ̀ lápapọ̀ gbogbo wọn ti parapọ̀ o, wọ́n ti sọ̀rọ̀, wọ́n fi gbogbo ẹnu sọ̀rọ̀ wípé kódà wọ́n tún plan pàápàá àwọn máa ṣe rally nílùú Ìgbòho láìpẹ́ yìí. gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n ń ṣe agitation fún Yorubanation tí wọ́n ń béèrè fún ìpínlẹ̀ Yorùbá, àwọn náà tún láwọn máa darapọ̀ mọ́ wọn. wọ́n ní láìpẹ́ yìí, mi ò ní sọ déètì náà fún security reasons, wọ́n láwọn máa darapọ̀ mọ́ wọn láti ṣe ìwọ́de wọ́ọ́rọ́wọ́ ní ìlú Ìgbòho láti fi yé Fúlàní wípé kò sí àyè fún wọn o nílùú Ìgbòho. in tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ikú tó pa ẹlẹ́dìyẹ, ikú náà gbọ́dọ̀ tún pe léwúrẹ́. wọ́n ní in tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí wọn nílùú Ìgàngàn, àwọn Yorùbá ní àìkẹhùn sọ̀rọ̀ ṣóun náà là kẹtàn sáré. wọ́n sì lókèèrè báyìí lójú jíjì tí ń mú ẹkún sùn. ara àwọn nǹkan tó fàárẹ̀ táwọn ọmọ Ìgbòho táwọn náà ti tètè yá dìde wípé aburú tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí wọn ní Ìgàngàn kò gbọ́dọ̀ ṣẹlẹ̀ sáwa níbí o, nítorí pé wíwá tí Gúnmi wá yìí ó lẹ́bọ̀ lẹ́rù, ó ní fura, ó sì mú fura lọ́wọ́. àwọn náà wọ́n ti wá parapọ̀ ní àná òde yìí ni wọ́n ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní sọ̀rọ̀. kí ni wọ́n wí? ẹ jẹ́ á bá wa mójú débẹ̀ káwa náà gbọ́ nǹkan tí àwọn ọmọ Ìgbòho sọ, àtàwọn Yorùbá míì náà tí wọ́n kún wọn lẹ́yìn. ṣé gbogbo lọ́balọ́ba lóyè nílùú Ìgbòho ni wọ́n ti sọ̀rọ̀, ni wọ́n sì ti gbáradì wípé kò sí àyè fún Fúlàní o. mò ń bọ̀, ẹ má jẹ́ ṣàtótónu jù, ẹ jẹ́ á mójú débẹ̀ káwò kí ni wọ́n sọ.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother in Islam and my sister in Islam. This is where one scholar from northern side. This is where he came 5 days ago. Ahmad Gunmin. Gunmin came to Igboho 5 days ago without informed all the indigenous people of Igboho. Gunmin snake into Igboho to come and do video here. So as a good scholar, Gunmin if Gunmin want to prove that he is a good scholar, according to Al-Quran, Quran says that La tadkhulu buyutan ghayra buyutikum hatta tastahnisu wa tusallimu ala ahliha. Quran says that you should not enter somebody's house. You should not enter somebody's town. You should not enter somebody's city until you inform the people in the city. So it's like Gunmin did not know what he's doing. Gunmin don't know anything in our Quran. If Gunmin knows what he's doing, Gunmin supposed visit all the Islamic cleric in Igboho. Gunmin did not visit Imam in Igboho. Gunmin did not visit any Islamic scholar in Igboho, especially our Royal Highness in Igboho. Gunmin did not visit any one of them. He sneak, Gunmin and his people sneak into Igboho and do video. Although we did not know the agenda of Gunmin, but I know Gunmin and his people, Gunmin and his Fulani people must have hidden agenda. Must have hidden agenda. Yes. Because we all know it's not today, it's not today, that we know that Gunmin is always soliciting for bandit people. Gunmin always soliciting for kidnapper people. Gunmin always soliciting for terrorist people. So he solicits for Boko Haram people. Now Gunmin just bang and his people. into Igboho without notify anybody.
Yes.
And Al-Quran says that inna mali mu'minuna ikhwatun fa aslihu bayna akhwaykum. If truly Gumi want to make peace, he's supposed to visit the Royal Highness, the Kabiyesi of Igboho. If truly Gumi want to make peace, he's supposed to visit the chief imam of Igboho. If truly Gumi want to make peace, he's supposed to visit all the Islamic clerics and all the pillars of Igboho. But Gumi did not do that. He just came. He sneak. Gumi sneak. Because all the indigenous people of Igboho, they are here. We have
indigenous
community leader.
Indigenous of Igboho, àwọn bíbí Igboho, àwọn tí wọ́n jẹ́ ọmọ bíbí tí wọ́n ò dẹ̀ fi ayé wọn ṣekúṣe ẹ̀mí wọn ìwà sọmọ Igboho nìkan bíbí ọmọ bíbí ilẹ̀ Yorùbá àwọn ọmọ ọkọ bíbí. Yes. Mashallah. Ègbó ló sọ o.
So àwọn bàbá wa nílùú Igboho.
Chairman ló lọ. Mashallah.
Community leader ìlú
Igboho Mashallah.
So ẹ dákun ẹ bá wa àgbáyé sọ̀rọ̀.
Community.
Alhamdulillah. Àti ẹ̀yin àlejò tí ẹ wá.
Share program. Help us share the program, please. Ẹ bá share program yẹn jọ Igboho la, ẹ bá share program yẹn.
Kò sí délé ọba gẹ́gẹ́ bí àáfàá tó tún jẹ́ kò délé chief ìmọ̀mù ìlú.
Mashallah.
Ọba Abdulrasheed Aníkúlápó Jayéọlá ọ̀nà oníbodè. Imam Mudasiru Sewu. Kúlàbáyé gbogbo ilẹ̀ Yorùbá pátá. Òde ọ̀dọ̀ wọn. Lẹ́yìn ìgbà náà iwájú Muslim Grammar School ẹsẹ̀ títì ní Sambọ̀dù yìí wà. Everybody ní mọ́ à ń ṣe program tó bá jẹ́ Mùsùlùmí níbẹ̀. A sì rí tó fi ṣe ohun tó ṣe ó ń kọjá lọ ni. Àmọ́ lẹ́yìn tó kẹta tó kọjá níbẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ la ń gbọ̀n kékeré. Ọba ògbówó lọ́wọ́ rẹ o. Kíkù ìmọ̀mù ìlú òsì gba owó lọ́wọ́ rẹ̀. Èmi tí mò ń sọ̀rọ̀ ni Alhaji Adam Lawal alága ìdàgbàsókè. Àgbà kọ́bọ̀ ní ọwọ́ rẹ̀. Sunday Igboho ọmọ wa ni o. A sì lè padà lẹ́yìn rẹ̀. Ọmọ wa ní Igboho. Mélòó ni ara Igboho lára ilẹ̀ Yorùbá tá a sọ pé àtẹ̀lélẹ̀ Yorùbá mi tílẹ̀ Yorùbá bá ń lọ.
Igboho ní sáré láéláé bá mi sọ pé amínà.
Látà gbogbo Yorùbá níbẹ̀ ni làwa lè lọ.
Share program yẹn jọ.
Lẹ́yìn Igboho la wà.
Igboho ló gbé bí. Bàbá wa ààrẹ Mùsùlùmí ìlú Igboho àwọn náà lè
lẹ́yìn. Gbogbo Mùsùlùmí yẹn.
Ọlọ́run jẹ́ kẹ́mi yín ogun. Ẹ̀yin ẹ bá àjẹ ìgbà gbogbo àgbáyé sọ̀rọ̀.
Lórí ohun tí Gumi ṣe níbí àwọn ọmọ ń pa ẹ̀ bí gbìyànjú jalè wọ lúùlú ni torí ohun tá à ń sọ ya ti mọ̀ fún wọn mọ̀ gbọ́ níbikíbi.
À ń gbọ́ lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí.
Ọlọ́run gbogbo etí tí máa ń gbọ́ etí ní òní di o. Ojú tí ń wò wá ojú náà ní fọ́. Alhaji Hussein Ọlágòkè ni èmi ṣe tí mo jẹ́ bàbá Sunday Igboho. Pẹ̀lú mi níbí. Jamiu Ifá ń bẹ pẹ̀lú mi níbí.
Ifá gbogbo rẹ̀ mọ́. Ifá gbogbo Ṣàgámù gbogbo rẹ̀ mọ́ àwọn ni wọ́n dúró yìí.
Ọlọ́run ìrọ̀rùn iná ẹni Sunday Igboho fi ìlú Kútọ́nù sílẹ̀.
Igboho sà ó bàbá Dami àgbáwo.
Èyí tí Gumi sọ pé òun fún Lèmọ́mù nígbà òun fún ọba nígbà kò sí ohun tọ́jọ́ ọba ọ̀nà oníbodè tilẹ̀ Igboho kò tẹ́wọ́ gba sísì lọ́dọ̀ ẹnìkan àwọn náà tá a sì jẹ́ olórí ìlú àtẹ́wọ́ gba nǹkan kan gẹ́gẹ́ bí ohun tálágà ló wí tó èmi mo ìtọ́jú lórí Mùsùlùmí ohun tí ń lọ lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí ohun nìyẹn nílùú Igboho Ọlọ́run fi wá lára balẹ̀ o ìlú Igboho ò ní bàjẹ́ Ọ̀yọ́ state ò ní bàjẹ́ o Nàìjíríà ò ní bàjẹ́ lápapọ̀.
Ààrẹ.
Àwọn Ifá
Igboho náà ń pè ní
Ifá Igboho second command Sunday Igboho. Àwọn àgbà máa ń pa òwe kan pé tí ọba ọba sílé ìrẹsẹ̀ ọba máa ń sọ̀rọ̀ tó máa ń dún ramúramù. Gumi ti ń pẹrẹ lóhun tí ò tó ohun tí ò tó ni Gumi ń pẹrẹ o.
Gumi tí ò jẹ́ kẹ̀kẹ́.
Gumi ohun tí ò tó ni o. Ṣe rí ohun tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí
Please help us share the program, please. Help us share program.
This is second command of Igboho. Share it.
Nígbà tí àlejò wa yìí dé nísìn àáfàá ńlá yìí tá a mọ̀ pé ẹni Ọlọ́run ni kò síbi tí gbogbo ọba tó ń bẹ ń gbò yìí ló dé ilé wọn tó kí wọn lọ́kọ̀ọ̀kan ó délé lèmọ́mù ó délé alága ìlú gbogbo àwọn àlú wa tẹ̀lé wa ẹnìkan wà ń bọ̀ láti ìlú ibi tí wọn ò mọ̀ ọwọ́ kó mọ̀lú sínú ọkọ̀ ó dẹ́yìn òdi ọwọ́ já mọ̀lú yẹn lẹ̀ ó sáré ṣe nǹkan pápápá ọlọ yóò wá mọ̀ fi gbowó lọ́wọ́ àwọn tójú wọn dúdú yóò mọ̀ fi gbowó lọ́wọ́ àwọn
àrẹ tójú wọn dúdú. Kó rìn.
Ẹ jẹ́ kí n sọ nǹkan kan fún yín orílẹ̀-èdè ò ní bàjẹ́ o ẹ wọ́nu Gunmin o kọ́mọ́ padà wá bímọ o Ìgbòho ẹ ṣe bí téèyàn wà téèyàn mọ sọ pé òun kógun bọ̀ wá bá ajá ń bí o alálẹ̀ ilẹ̀ yóò ní gbà fún o wọ́n ẹ dá nǹkan tí ọ̀dà sí ìlú Ìgbòho Sunday Ìgbòho ọmọ dáadáa ni kìí sọlẹ̀ kìí ṣe 419 níbi tó sì lọ yẹn lágbára ìlú Ìgbòho Ọlọ́run òjò kó mbẹ̀ láyọ̀ yóò kó mbẹ̀ láyọ̀ ọmọ akínláwá o nílùú Ìgbòho àwọn màálù tí Gunmin ń sọ àwọn ọmọ ibi tó ti rí àwọn màálù yẹn o nítorí pé ẹ sọ fún nínú àwọn nǹkan tó sọ yẹn ẹ wo ọmọ ìlú kan wo ló wà ńbẹ̀ ọmọ ọkọ wo ló wà ńbẹ̀ tí ẹ bá ṣe àwọn ara wọn ọpẹ nìkan ní pòfẹsọ ọpẹ nìkan ní kiri níbo ní ti ń ṣe pòfẹsọ tiẹ̀ nígbà tó bá yẹ pé èèyàn gidi ní Gunmin sígbà tó wọlé ṣe bí muslim ló pe rẹ̀ bó ni ò ṣe lọ kírun ní mọ́sálásí kan kọ́ wá dákọ̀ pé tó ẹ̀yin mọ́sálásí yóò ẹgbẹ́wọ́ bísẹ̀bílì láyò wípé nítorí òun ni Gunmin o òun sì ẹ wá wo ibi tó tún wá lọ ibi tó tún lọ níbi muslim ló tún lọ ṣe ti rí pé Ọlọ́run ó bínú sí kẹ́nìkan bá rò pé òun ó fi Sunday Igboho mọ gba yìí lọ́dọ̀ àwọn tójú wọn ọ̀la kìí ṣerú àwa o Gunmin Ọlọ́run mú ọ gbogbo agbára tó bá ní àfi tí kèé bá sobìnrin ló bí ọ lọ́lọ́run ò ní mú ọ àwọn ọ̀dẹ̀ bẹ̀rù àwọn tó ń kó káàkiri gbogbo àwọn tó kó ṣe rí níjọ́ tí wọ́n ká Igboho mọ́lé ó wu ọlá Ọlọ́run ni pẹ̀lú ọlá ohun tí àwọn bàbá wa máa ń sọ fún ní Igboho pé mọ́ pààyàn o mọ́ jẹ́ kẹ́jẹ́ èèyàn tọwọ́ èèyàn bọ́ o ohun tó wò nìyẹn tó fi sájáde ńlé kì í ṣe ọkàn fi rẹ̀ kalẹ̀ ní kì í ṣe pé bóyá ìjọba kan ló mú ṣé tó bá fẹ́ bá yín jà ṣe tó bẹ́ẹ̀ ni tó bẹ́ẹ̀ náà àmọ́ gbogbo nǹkan tọ́lọ́run ni a kí àwọn àfáà wa tó wá gbogbo ìgbà tí wọ́n bá mọ lọ wọn ò ní sìn lágbára Ọlọ́run tí Gunmin bá fẹ́ wádìí dáadáa kó lọ sílùú Ṣakí kó lọ wádìí sítórì wípé ìgbà táwọn olè kan wá sí Ṣakí tí wọ́n jalè ńbẹ̀ tí agbára àwọn ọlọ́pàá ọ̀ka bí wọ́n ṣe ń bọ̀ wá lùgbòho wọn ò kọjá ìlú lùgbòho tó fi mú wọn nígbà tó pé àwọn bàbá wa ń bẹ tí wọ́n ń yẹlẹ̀ fún aláburú ẹ̀dá tí ẹ bá ṣe pé wọ́n kàn ṣàánú ẹ̀ kẹ́sẹ́ pé wọ́n mọ̀ wọ́n mọ̀ nǹkan tí wọ́n lè ṣe fún ó ti wá lọ tán ọwá ju kínní kí wọ́n fi lè mọ̀ pé kọjá ṣé àáfàá tó wáyé nísìnyí tí gbogbo àwọn yẹn ó kéré sí alága ìlú ni ààrẹ mùsùlùmí ni gbogbo àwọn èèyàn ńlá alága ọ̀dọ́ rẹ̀ ẹ wo àáfàá tó wáyé nísìnyí ẹ wo lèmọ́mù tó wáyé nísìnyí ṣé àwọn nísìnyí àwọn kan rẹ́rìn ṣé ẹ dákun tí wọ́n bẹ̀rù nísìnyí wọ́n ní ẹ̀wù wọn dúró wọ́n rẹ́rìn níbi kíní tó sọ ǹjọ́ yẹn bẹ̀rẹ̀ kíní tó sọ ǹjọ́ yẹn wọ́n sáré sọ lẹ́yìn eléyìí kí jìbèrè rẹ̀ sọ gígùn kọ́mọ dùgì aládé o ó stop ẹ̀ tí n bá ń lọ gbogbo bí kíbi kọ́mọ débi mọ́ o àwọn èèyàn tó bá dẹ̀ ní nígboyà tó jẹ́ ìrìn wọn wọ́n jẹ́ Yorùbá gan ló fi lọ́kàn balẹ̀ pé kọ́mọ wá bí àti Yorùbá yẹn àtìrìn wọn wọ́n jọ parun ni o ìlú Ìgbòho yìí kìí ṣe ibi tí èèyàn kàn lè wá téèyàn wá pé òun fẹ́ wá sí aburú ń bẹ̀ kó tó ní lọ́kàn ló ti jáde láyé o omi tí wọ́n fi dá ìlú Ìgbòho ni o torí pé ìlú Ìgbòho ó láìkì àlejò ó dẹ̀ láìkì onílé Ọlọ́run ó jẹ́ kí kẹ́délé dáadáa nípàdé àgbákò gbogbo bí ẹ rí i pé aṣọ funfun lẹ́wọ̀ òun wá wo àmúlùmọ́lá aṣọ tó wọ̀ ọjọ́ yẹn gan ọbẹ̀ tó bí oríṣi 15 ṣé mo ra èèyàn dáadáa nìyẹn
ṣé múra dáadáa nìyẹn ẹ dákun
olùkìn
ẹwù àfa àbúṣe lónìí irùngbọ̀n rẹ̀ ó dúdú lọ́la irùngbọ̀n rẹ̀ ó funfun ọwọ́ ní Gunmi sọ kọ gidi ni mo ń jẹ́ Gunmi èmi ń jẹ́ Jamiu mo tún ń jẹ́ Ifá kí sọ kọ gidi wà ní Gunmi nítorí Ọlọ́run ó kọ gidi irú ẹ̀ nìyẹn ni wọ́n ń bá wọn ọ̀dọ́ bá ṣe ni tí wọ́n bá gbé yẹn á gbowó á mú tiẹ̀ á fún ọ̀jọba ní tiẹ̀ òun náà mú tiẹ̀ lọ. ẹ sọ fún kójó kọjá o kò gbọ́dọ̀ gba ọ̀nà Ìgbòho yìí kọjá rárá mọ́ tí ó bẹ gbọ́ ọ̀nà kọjá gbogbo ohun tá mú kalẹ̀ dé láìsí mbẹ̀ tó bá tún bí òun da kó tún gbabẹ̀ kọjá kó wò pé bó jẹ́ òru ló fi wọlé kò ní gbẹ́sẹ̀ kó mi tọ́ wa agbára rẹ̀. ẹ̀sìn wọn alága ọ̀dọ́ ọlọ́run ní fi lè mú ẹ̀sìn àdúgbẹ́. ẹni tó kù tó fẹ́ bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ ní ìsìn tí wọ́n máa bá gbogbo àgbáyé sọ̀rọ̀ náà ni alága ọ̀dọ́ ìlú Ìgbòho àwọn náà ilé ọ̀yà.
alága ọ̀dọ́
alága ọ̀dọ́ ẹ bá wa sọ̀rọ̀.
The youth chairman of the Youth Liberation Forum. As rightly said by the earlier speakers,
yes,
we are here to denounce what Sheikh Ahmad Gumi said some days
not
back.
Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, ordinary Ahmad.
Let's put it like that. Let's honor him. Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, what he said some days back on his way coming from Elisha. He just branched in Igboho here and just do 2 minutes video here, right here, where we are standing here. Sheikh Gumi, as a scholar that he called himself, I think for him, if he wants to do normal thing and follow the normal procedure, before he can do any sort of a kind of thing in Igboho here, he's supposed to visit the leaders of this town. If rightly you want to proud himself as a scholar of Islam. So Sheikh Gumi did not do anything of such. He didn't visit the chief imam of Igboho land here. Didn't visit the Kabiyesi Oba on anybody that we are having here. So what he did is wrong, totally wrong. And we are just using this medium to let him know and let him realize that Igboho here we are standing is not a town that he can just bang on and do whatever he likes. Wherever he is, if at all he's hearing us and he's watching this video, we are using this video to give him a sound of warning that he should desist from a sort of habit. So that's all what I have to say.
adúpẹ́ ní ọwọ́ ẹ̀rọ ti lọ lọ́rọ̀ bọ́dọ̀ àwọn leader chairman gbogbo ọlọ́run kó bá wa dó pẹ̀lú yín. Ànábì wa Muhammad Ànábì ní aluwaladu siru abiyi nígbà tí akíkanjú ẹnìkan jáde láyé táwa lọ kí wọn lé wọn á bá ọmọ rẹ̀ wọ́n bá ní ipò tí bàbá rẹ̀ máa wà. Ìgbòho tí mo wọlé nìyí ọkàn mi balẹ̀ inú mi dùn. Àní mo ní pé táwa bá kú lórí tá à ń ṣe yìí ọkàn àwọn tó bí ọlọ́mọ ò lè bàjẹ́ tọ́lá àwọn ọmọ ò lè débẹ̀ ilé ìkan mọ́ ṣépè fún aláyéláyé. Wàláì tọ́lá àgbowó ń bẹ ẹnìkan kò fún mi lówó ń bẹ ẹnìkan kò fẹ́ nìkan lówó ń bẹ ṣùgbọ́n ọmọ ò lè bá ilé yìí kí ni wọ́n bàjẹ́. Gbogbo tí ń jẹ́ ìran àgbà ọ̀dọ́ ẹni tí ó ti ń múra fún òfin lọ́ọ̀lì kíámà tí ń bẹ́nu Ìgbòho gbogbo tí wọ́n pè ní ìnira láyé Ọlọ́run níjọ́ kàn wọ́n mọ́ láyéláyé. Àlùwọ́ládù sírù àbí ọmọ ni ó júwe pé bàbá mi le bàbá ń gbàtà dé ìrì lẹ́ẹ̀kan wọ́n ń júwe pé bí àwọn ṣe máa ń rí nígbòho ní Sunday Ìgbòho ṣe yẹn àtúwá débì gbogbo ọmọ Ìgbòho tún wá sọ wípé ní pé àwọn ọmọ Ìgbòho rí bí a ṣe máa ń bẹ lọ́hùn fún olóyè Sunday Ìgbòho gbogbo ajájọ wí bẹ́ẹ̀ bá fẹ́ fọ aṣọ báyìí ọwọ́ ọ̀rẹ́ òkòkò mọ́ná kó tó di pé aṣọ mọ́ àníyàn táwa fi ń wí àfi kírísítẹ́nì wo àfáláwo wo mùsùlùmí ni àfi wo ṣùgbọ́n Sunday Ìgbòho èèyàn takuntakun lẹ̀ Yorùbá ni Ifá bàbá Ifá ni wọ́n jókòó èmi ti mọ Ifá nísìnyí àfà ilẹ̀ ta sí ní Ṣàgámù lèmi gbé wàláì làvin Sunday Ìgbòho èèyàn takuntakun ni Ọlọ́run mọ́sá àwọn alábíbí Ànábì Muhammad ọmọ Adéyẹmọ ìràwọ̀ wo ní kúnlẹ̀ Yorùbá láyéláyé àjọ sọ pé bá ti máa ń sọ pé má pàgbọ́ ọmọ Adéyẹmọ má pàgbọ́ ọmọ Adéyẹmọ. Bàbá Kábíyèsí àti báwọn sọ̀rọ̀ bàbá wa bá sọ̀rọ̀ bàbá Adé tí Adé hàn yín bàbá wa Ìmáàmù Ìgbòho bàbá wa ṣe wà Mùdáfíd ẹ bá mi wí sóhun lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí. Ẹ bá mi tún sóhun wí lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí. Gbogbo wa tó ní pé Ìgbòho Sunday Ìgbòho kì í ṣe ọmọ olórí ibú ọmọ táwọn fi ayé àwọn fún ni. Tàbí sì pé ìtí ń ṣe yẹn pọ̀ àbá àwọn tó bí lọ́mọ gan fi gbogbo ayé wọn lé lọ́wọ́ pé wọ́n ṣe gbogbo tó ń bá lọ yẹn. Ọlọ́run la bá bí wọ́n ti fi ọwọ́ sí Ìgbòho ní kú láíláí. Mèsáyà wa nìyẹn ní Yorùbá nation.
Má pa Ìgbòho ọmọ Adéyẹmọ.
Ẹ̀yin Ifá pẹ̀lú àṣẹ Ọlọ́run.
Má pa Ìgbòho ọmọ Adéyẹmọ.
Mèsáyà wa nìyẹn ní Yorùbá nation.
Má pa Ìgbòho ọmọ Adéyẹmọ.
Ọlá àbíbí ànàbí Muhammad.
Má pa Ìgbòho ọmọ Adéyẹmọ.
Àti gbogbo àwa ta nífẹ̀ẹ́ sí Ìgbòho.
Má pa Ìgbòho ọmọ Adéyẹmọ.
Gbogbo tí bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ọ̀dọ́ àgbàlagbà bàbá wa ààrẹ mùsùlùmí gbogbo bàbá alága gbogbo yín pátápátá yẹn ẹ̀ ní fọmọ yín dé tẹ̀sẹ̀ yìí. Ẹ̀ ní fi ẹ̀jẹ̀ yín dé tẹ̀sẹ̀ yìí. Ẹ̀ ní fàyè yín dé tẹ̀sẹ̀ yìí. Àwọn tí wọ́n ń dààmú àwọn diaspora náà ti rí i pé Ìgbòho èé ṣe olórí bùlú.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni àwọn aráàlú Ìgbòho ti gbàbọdè.
Ìgbòho gbàbọdè.
Àwọn aráàlú Ìgbòho gbàbọdè o ibẹ̀ láwa yóò ẹ máa bọ̀rọ̀ yín lọ.
Ìgbòho ń bẹ nínú tó yẹ pé ilẹ̀ Yorùbá tí wọ́n múra fún ogun tí ń bọ̀ wá pé tó bá wá òní fara rẹ lọ. Wọ́n dúró re gidi gan. Ìgbòho dúró re. So ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ẹ bá ń gbìyànjú ẹ kọ̀ntínú gbìyànjú yín. Yorùbá nation dandan ni ó máa wáyé. Ó sì wáyé. Bàbá wa Ifá ẹ̀nífẹ̀mí yín dí o. Ẹ̀nífẹ̀mí yín dí o. Mo tún rí lédè àbá ẹ̀tún wá tuntun sí. Àbá ẹ̀tún wá tuntun sí. Bàbá Ọlọ́run ní jẹ́ gbà àdánwò ní kàn yín láíláí. Wọ́n lá sáúfà yù tí kàrọ̀ ọ̀kà. Láti kólẹ̀ ọba wa gbadé lákùn má jẹ́ wọ́n kú láíláí. Láti bá àwọn láàrin níta owó yìí mo ní kálukú ló làfà. Kálukú ló làfà o.
Ẹ bá mi sàdọ̀ àwọn
ọba dé lákùn káwọn lọ́ǹgẹ̀ ìsájà Nasiru láì Kwalifájú bá a dà á. Àwọn tá a sọ ojú wa yìí láti kú wa lọ́dọ̀ federal government kò ní wọ́n lára o kò ní wọ́n lára o ṣùgbọ́n tó lọ́ bá ti sọ èèyàn ẹni kan ò lè mú láíláí ìṣọ́ Ọlọ́run tó ń lágbára jẹ̀ wúri lọ ọlọ́dà kò dáàbò wá lórí. Ìsájà Nasiru láì Kwalifájú bá a dà á wọ́n tà ń bá tí a dá a àbálí amúlòlè làkọ́díjà kún ìrísùn wálé ìlà àbúrò àbùnà wọ́kùnrin sí yùyú yìí ní jẹ̀mí ìsàdá. Gbogbo wọn sọ pé òun là fẹ́ kọ́ lọ́hùn bá wa fẹ́. Òun là fẹ́ kọ́ lọ́hùn bá wa fẹ́. Yorùbá nation làwa ń béèrè. Òun là fẹ́ kọ́ lọ́hùn bá wa fẹ́. Láti ṣojú àbúrò bàbá wọn Yorùbá nation làwa ń béèrè. Òun là fẹ́ kọ́ lọ́hùn bá wa fẹ́. Federal government
ibi tí Gumi wá rèé o.
Kẹ́ni Muslim global community kí la fẹ́ jẹ́ káyé gbọ́. Òun là fẹ́. Yorùbá nation làwa ń béèrè. Òun là fẹ́ kọ́lọ́hún bá wa fẹ́.
Tọ́ àti gbogbo ẹ̀yin aráàlú Ìgbòho ẹ kú àlejò wa lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀ gbogbo àgbáyé ní wò àwọn táwọn bẹ lórí pílátífọ̀mù yẹn ti lé 1000 yẹn 1000 plus lọ́wọ́ wà lọ́wọ́ káàkiri àgbáyé wọ́n wà láyé Amẹ́ríkà wọ́n wà ní London gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ń wò wá ìlú Ìgbòho ọ̀gbàbọ̀dé o Gumi Ọ̀yọ́ wa ni o ibi tí Gumi wà rèé o Muslim Grammar School Mọ̀dẹ́kẹ́ Ìgbòho ibi Gumi Ọ̀yọ́ wa ni o Ọ̀yọ́ state Gumi ọ̀wà dá skul lẹ́ o torí ní táwọn sọ ni pé Gumi wá dá skul lẹ́ nípò o ọlọ́run ẹ̀rọ ti wá ara lẹ̀ láti gbọ́ ara o skul yìí ti wà nílùú ìnẹ́sẹ̀ yìí wọ́n ti dálẹ̀ 2003 ni wọ́n ti dá skul yìí sílẹ̀ Gumi ọ̀ra lẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ ọba Ìgbòho Gumi ọ̀ra lẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ ìjòyè Ìgbòho Gumi ò sì ralẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ àwọn ìmáàmù Ìgbòho ọmọ ìlú Ìgbòho kankan ọ̀talẹ̀ fún Gumi o àwọn aráàlú Ìgbòho sì rí Gumi rí ṣùgbọ́n torí pé Gumi ó ní èròǹgbà burúkú lọ́kàn Ọ̀yọ́ wá sínú ìlú Ìgbòho Ọ̀yọ́ wá ni o wàlẹ́ Ọ̀yọ́ wá ni bí Gumi ọba yọ wá kí ló dé tí ò lè sálámà sí ìmáàmù ìlú tí ọba tiẹ̀ lè sálámà sọ́ba gẹ́gẹ́ bí a good Muslim gẹ́gẹ́ bí mùsùlùmí gidi mo kàn ti yáyà Al-Qur'an kalẹ̀ kan pé Ọlọ́run sọ́nù Al-Qur'an pé látẹ́dìkùlù bùyú táwọn Ọlọ́run ní ẹ má wọlé kan o ẹ má wọlé gẹ́ràbù yóò ti kún tí kì í ṣe lé yín ẹ má wọnú òlu kan tí kì í ṣe lu yín o àtàtẹ̀sẹ̀ nísù àbí kẹ́ ẹ gbà yọ̀ǹda lọ́wọ́ àwọn aráàlú wàtúsálìmù àlàálíà kẹ́ ẹ wá lọ mọ sálámà sí àwọn aráàlú yẹn pé sàlámà lẹ́kùn mọ wọnú òlu yín léni o ẹ dákun ibo ni màá dé sí owó náà ṣe ń ṣe ní òlu yìí o ẹ gbọ́dọ̀ ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ Gumi ò ṣe báyìí ó wọnú òlu kò kí ọba Gumi wọnú òlu kò kí jòyè Gumi wọnú òlu kò kí mọ́mọ́ òlu kò kí àáfà kankan nínú òlu kò sálámà kankan sẹ́ni kankan nínú òlu àti olórí ọ̀dọ́ ṣé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni Gumi ọmọ gan o Gumi ọmọ gbọnú o torí pé Gumi lọ́dọ̀ tèmi o wàláhì má ṣe ń pè ní Islamic scholar eléyìí Gumi kì í sáfà Gumi you are not an Islamic cleric kó o lè bá a gbọ́ o lè má gbọ́ Yorùbá lọ́jọ́ máa ṣe ìbò lẹ́ẹ̀kan èmi náà fagídí sòǹbọ̀n bí mo ṣe gbọ́ ọmọ lẹ́sẹ̀ ń gbọ́ èyí tẹ̀ ń gbọ́ wá dákun o Gumi you are not a good Islamic scholar for you to bank someone town in Igboho and you cannot visit any Islamic scholar you cannot visit any oba you cannot visit anybody you snake in. So eléyìí àwa bíi láti wá ṣe ìwádìí pé ṣé lóòótọ́ làwọn ará Ìgbòho gbàbọ̀dè ṣùgbọ́n ẹ dákun gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n ń sọ lórí social media pé àwọn aráàlú Ìgbòho gbàbọ̀dè fọmọ kò rí bẹ́ẹ̀ o ẹ dákun ẹ má sọ nǹkan bá mọ́ àwọn tá a ti ṣe fídíò lórí rẹ̀ ìlú Ìgbòho lọ́wọ́ olórí ọ̀dọ́ ti sọ̀rọ̀ alága ọ̀dọ́ ti sọ̀rọ̀ alága gbogbo ọjọ́ tí a máa inú òlú Ìgbòho wọ́n ti bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kan ààrẹ mùsùlùmí Ìgbòho wọ́n ti sọ̀rọ̀ kódà èmi àti kábíyèsí gẹ́gẹ́ tún sọ̀rọ̀ lórí fóònù wàláhì èmi àti kábíyèsí ìlú Ìgbòho a sọ̀rọ̀ lórí fóònù gbà mọ́ wọ̀lú adọ́dọ̀ ìmáàmù òlú tí bí làwọn àwọn náà lù àwọn ọ̀fẹ́ yẹranko bí Gumi ṣe yẹranko nínú àwọn báwo làwọn náà ṣe wá hùwà ẹranko Gumi hùwà ẹranko hùwà màálù káwọn náà wá wọnú òlù kákẹ́ wàá máa ṣe fídíò láì yọjú sí ọba láì yọjú sí máàmù láì yọjú sẹ́nì kankan eléyìí ó bad ṣùgbọ́n ó kù púpọ̀ káàtó gbogbo ẹ̀yin aráàlú Ìgbòho pátá Ọlọ́run bá máa bá wa dúró tì yín o Ọlọ́run ní fi sílẹ̀ o látòrí kábíyèsí bàbá wa bàbá gbogbo ìlú Ìgbòho pátá bàbá gbogbo apátá Ọlọ́run dákun jẹ́ kẹ́mi ń wógùn Ọlọ́run jẹ́ mi ń wógùn Ọlọ́run bá wa jẹ́ mi ń wógùn má jẹ́ ká fa ìsàn ló gbà eléyìí tó kù tá a lò láyé Ọlọ́run má jẹ́ àfa ìsàn ló Ọlọ́run wa jẹ́ ká pẹ́ lórí àpèrè náà ẹ jẹ́ àṣẹ yá ṣe wàláhù ya'simuka minan nas wàláhù ya'simuka minan nas wàláhù ya'simuka minan nas alifáàtì jẹ́ àṣẹfáàtì àkàn fún wọn bismillahirrahmanirrahim alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin arrahmanirrahim maliki yawmiddin iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin lẹ́yìn rẹ̀ àdọ́dọ̀ bàbá wa Imam Bashir nínú òlù tó jẹ́ bàbá ìmáàmù òlù Ìgbòho àwọn náà bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ àwa Imam Mudasir bàbá wa Imam Mudasir ẹ̀yà ní ṣe wallahu ya'simuka minan nas wallahu ya'simuka minan nas wallahu ya'simuka minan nas bàbá bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ wọ́n ṣàdúrà tó pọ̀ fún wa gbogbo wọn fìfẹ́ hàn wọn àgbowó kankan lọ́wọ́ ẹnì kankan wàláhì àlùkùránì wàláhì Gumi ọ̀yọ́jú sẹ́nì kankan o wẹ̀rẹ̀ màjìnnọ́nù ní Gumi o màjìnnọ́nù ní Gumi o ṣàkíyù ní Gumi o kódà àwọn bàbá yìí ní àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ kan bá sọ àdúrà àwọn bàbá nínú ìlú Ìgbòho àdúrà àwọn lọ́gbà torí wọ́n jẹ́ kó yẹ pé tó bá jẹ́ pé àwọn ọ̀dọ́ Ìgbòho wọ́n rí Gumi ni ó jẹ́ ṣe ká pa Gumi
kí mo fi sojú ni o tó a fi sojú yóò ké tààrà ni o.
àdúrà àwọn ọlọ́gbà torí pé tán bá pa Gumi síbí ẹ dákun kí ni fẹ́ dákun kí la fẹ́ kán bá wọn fà so àdúrà àwọn bàbá yìí náà lọ́gbà tán ká tó bá jẹ́ pé lọ ká Gumi mọ́ ibí yìí ni wàláhì òkú Gumi náà bá gbé wọn bí torí pé ìgbà táwa gé wọn náà lù á rí pé security ń bẹ nínú ìlú yìí o oríṣiríṣi question náà ń béèrè lọ́wọ́ wa wàláhì ìlú yìí kì í ṣèlú kan tẹ́tẹ́ yẹn ọkàn sọ pé òun wọ̀ ṣùgbọ́n ibi tí Gumi gbà kọjá ọkàn sáré lọ opportunity
títì ńlá ni ọkẹ yóò wá ní lẹ́yìn.
So torí ìdí eléyìí kò sí wàhálà kankan o Ọlọ́run ní ẹbẹ̀rẹ̀ kọ̀ọ̀kan wá sílẹ̀ ọmọ ọba tí wọ́n mú wa káàkiri látàárọ̀ náà lélẹ́yìí ẹ̀yin náà sálámà sí gbogbo àwọn èèyàn káàkiri àgbáyé.
Salamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salaam wa rahmatullahi.
Àwọn èèyàn wa ni mo fẹ́ rọ̀ lórí social media. Alquran sọ fún wa pé ń jà fún fásitì fún bìnẹ́bà fàtàbà ìyá nù. Ẹ dákun tá a bá gbọ̀n kankan ẹ má jẹ́ kan sọ àdọ̀tà ara wa. Ntọ́ da ni pé ká ṣe investigation ká ṣèwádìí wọ́n ní nǹkan báyìí ṣẹlẹ̀ wọ́n ní Gunmin wá sí gbọ́ ẹni tó kọ́ pè mí níjẹta lórí fóònù ó ní Gunmin wá gbọ́ mo ní kò wá ó ló wá mo ní kò wá ó dẹ̀ ṣẹlẹ̀ sí mi ní WhatsApp ó wá ń béèrè àwọn béèrè kan ó lóun fẹ́ mọ kí ni ohun tí ń ṣẹlẹ̀ kóun tó sọ̀rọ̀ ẹnìyẹn Olúwaṣínà Àkànbí so ọmọ wa náà ni Mr Wisdom ọmọ wa ni ọmọ bíbí ìlú Ìgbòho nípa Èkó ní gbé so ó yẹ kóun náà mọ program tí mò ń sọ yìí so ohun tó dájú nìyẹn ẹ dákun torí pé tá a bá ń gbọ̀n kẹ́ tá a bá ń béèrè ó ń béèrè sí náà a lè mọ sàlàyé pé bó ṣe rí nì but láti mọ sọ pé wọ́n gbàbọ̀dé wọ́n ṣe kinní kan àgbàbọ̀dé o so ìjà tí gbogbo ayé wa ń gbèjà yìí ìjà wa lẹ́ ń gbé torí pé ọmọ wa ni Sunday Igboho bàbá wa ni ẹ̀gbọ́n wa ni ẹ dákun àrà àtà lóṣù mẹ́díà Ọlọ́run níjẹ́ kó bàjẹ́ ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kejì tí mo fẹ́ sọ àwọn kẹ̀kẹ́ tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ mo ní láti sáré correct ẹ̀ àwọn ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ní sọ ìjà ẹ̀sìn ní Sunday gbé lọ́wọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn ni ọ̀rọ̀ kinní kan ni ọ̀rọ̀ gbá ni ọ̀rọ̀ àwo ni kò rí bẹ́ẹ̀ o ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn kọ́ o tọ́já sí pé olóyè Sunday Igboho bá fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn ẹni tí wọ́n pa ní Ìgẹ̀gẹ̀ Fatai lórúkọ rẹ̀ Dr. Fatai Aborode mùsùlùmí ni àwọn Fúlàní tí wọ́n pa mùsùlùmí ni wọ́n kò ní gbìjà tó bí Christian ní Sunday so ẹni tún alájà tí wọ́n pa alájà Sẹ̀rífà lórúkọ rẹ̀ tọ́jà kó wá fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ mùsùlùmí ní pé mùsùlùmí nípa mùsùlùmí kò ní wulẹ̀ dá sí rárá ntọ́ wa ńlẹ̀ yìí kì í sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn ọ̀rọ̀ ìyà ń jẹ Yorùbá so táwọn náà bá dẹ̀ tẹ́jú wọn dáadáa ẹni tó bá jẹ́ ọmọ kọlẹ̀ Yorùbá náà mọ̀ pé ìyà ń jẹ wá so gbogbo bí wọ́n bá ti fọ Yorùbá sẹ́ni bá tú pátápátá extra tire lásán ni so lẹ́nu lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí even Malami sọ nínú fídíò kẹta wò ó ní ìran kan so èdè kan níbẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí ó lóun náà ní Fúlàní so tí ń jẹ́ sí pàtàkì àtakù bí wàtà kan ń bá wọn ṣe ta sí wọn wá ni so gbogbo àwọn kan ni olóyè Sunday Igboho ń kọ́ eribi tó sì fẹsẹ̀ lé eribi bẹ́ẹ̀ ni gbogbo àwọn àtàjẹ́ ọmọ olúgbòho náà la fẹsẹ̀ lé so ibẹ̀ náà la wà Yorubanation abala ọ̀sẹ̀hun Yorubanation so now bá a ṣe fẹ́ nìyẹn Ọlọ́run jẹ́ kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀ olóyè Sunday Igboho Ọlọ́run bá dó tì wọ́n
iṣẹ́ rẹ̀ ń tẹ̀síwájú sáájú ọmọ bọ̀tá ó ṣe rí nìyẹn o.
wọ́n wá àtọ̀rọ̀dá fún yín Ọlọ́run bá dó tì yín o pẹ̀lú gọ́lọ́ ẹ̀ ní ṣìṣe àtẹ̀yìn àtàwa Ọlọ́run dá olé wa á délẹ̀ lérí pẹ̀lú gọ́lọ́ la haula wala quwwata illa billah wọ́n kẹ́ sáré bá ń kọ́ ní ká tó lọ ẹ bá ń pè back to sender ohun burúkú
back to sender ohun burúkú
kó mọ́ ṣe ráyè wọ kádàrá wa
kó mọ́ ṣe ráyè wọ kádàrá wa
ẹkún àtò ṣé kò ní bá wa gbé
ẹkún àtò ṣé kò ní bá wa gbé
àṣàṣì aráyé kò ní dọ́dọ̀ wa
àṣàṣì aráyé kò ní dọ́dọ̀ wa
ìgbà ọ̀nà ló wọlé ikán
ìgbà ọ̀nà ló wọlé ikán
ìgbà ọ̀nà ló wọlé àwúrèbè
ìgbà ọ̀nà ló wọlé àwúrèbè
ìgbà ọ̀nà ní kíre wọlé wá
ìgbà ọ̀nà ní kíre wọlé wá
dúró tì wá Ọlọ́run má padà
dúró tì wá Ọlọ́run má padà
ràgàbò wa má jẹ́ abógun lọ
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 dúró tì wá Ọlọ́run má padà
ràgàbò wa má jẹ́ abógun lọ
ogun wà níwájú
ogun wà lẹ́yìn ràgàbò wa má jẹ́ abógun lọ
ogun wà lọ́tún
ogun wà lósì ràgàbò wa má jẹ́ abógun lọ
ogun wà lókè
ogun wà nílẹ̀ ràgàbò wa má jẹ́ abógun lọ
ọlá sáà
aṣáájú ẹ̀dá tí ń jẹ́ Muhammad ràgàbò wá.
Gbogbo Yorùbá látòkè délẹ̀ ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ. Nation látòkè délẹ̀ ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ.
Wọ́lá bàbá wa ṣe kò mú kásìrò.
Ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ.
Wọ́lá tó yẹ ṣe àjírà sí mi.
Ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ.
Ó ní àképè ẹwà dá wà lóhùn.
Ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ.
Kọ́tà mọ́ béèrè pọ̀ lọ́hùn wá dá.
Ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ. Yorùbá látòkè délẹ̀ ràgàbò wá. Mọ̀jẹ̀ agbógun lọ.
Ọlọ́run bá wa ṣe dáadáa fún bàbá wa Àgbàdé lápò. Ọlọ́run bá wa jẹ́mi bàbá wa Àgbàdé lápò ọlọ́jẹ́ mi ogun. Bàbá wa Àgbàdé lápò ọlọ́jẹ́ mi ogun. Ọlọ́run bá wa ṣe dáadáa fún wa. Ọlọ́run bá wa ṣe dáadáa fún wa. Bismillahi Fatiha. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Àwọn àfáà wa fẹ́ àwọn náà fẹ́ ní àwọn kankan.
Alhamdulillah. Àdúrà ni èmi fẹ́.
Ṣá program yẹn.
Èmi ni Alhaji Abdulrasheed ẹgbẹ́ ọmọ Aríkèwúyọ̀. Alámọ̀lẹ́yẹkẹ́ni.
Ó wà sí kíni.
Ẹ̀yin bá rẹ̀ Muhammad. Ṣé rí ọpẹ́ tí mo kọ́kọ́ dún ni pé Ọlọ́run ní kí àwọn àbáyọ wọlé láyè fún ẹnìkẹ́kẹ́ ní ìfẹ́ pé à ń bọ̀ wá. Wọ́n sì dé ìgbà wọ́n sọ̀kalẹ̀ sọ́dọ̀ bàbá Àgbàdé lápò. Èmi ti wà lọ́nà ẹnu sẹ́kẹ̀ níbi àwọn ti pè mí bóyá mọ́ dámọ́ sí ìrìn padà bọ̀ wá sílé. Mo wá padà nígbà tí mo débẹ̀ mo bá àwọn àfa wọn ní ojú yìí mo mọ̀ rí ọ̀dá nínú social media wọn láwọn náà ni. Bàbá wa ní ohun tí wọ́n gbé wáyìí èmi ni mo lè báwọn rin ìrìn àjò rẹ̀. Àyà mi bẹ ẹrú bà mí ṣùgbọ́n alhamdulilayi pé bá a ṣe wá tẹ̀sẹ̀ bọ̀ ní àjò yẹn àti àbájáde ọmọ ọba ibi tọ́lọ́run wá ní kó já sí ni nítorí pé ìbàjẹ́ yẹn ti pọ̀jù láti bí ìjẹta sí ìjẹrin a ó ní agbára gẹ àwa gẹ àlè sùn ṣùgbọ́n ọba tó wá ní kí gbogbo àgbáyé tí Gunmi sẹ́ndì kíní rẹ̀ sí tọ́lọ́run wá ní kí gbogbo àgbáyé tó mọ gbọ́n tá à ń wí nílùú Ìgbòho ẹ jẹ́ ká sọ pé alhamdulilayi mo wá ṣàdúrà fún bàbá wa Alhaji Abdulhakeem Ọládọ́gba tí wọ́n fi ẹ̀mí wọn lẹ̀ àwọn kọ́ ni kìí ṣe wàláyì Ìgbòho ni wọ́n wá fọ̀ mọ́ ọba tí wàá bẹ̀dẹ̀ àtọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹrú tí fídíò ọlọ́run kọ́ bá tó ọ̀rọ̀ yín ọlọ́run mọ́ mú yín o ọlọ́run mọ́ fà yín mọ́ mú yín fáwọn tí ì mú ni ẹlọ́kàn fẹ́ mọ́ bọ̀
Ọládọ́gba ni wọ́n ń sọ fún yẹn o.
Mọ́ mú yín fáwọn tí ì mú ni.
Bàbá wa Ọládọ́gba ọlọ́run mọ́ fà yín mọ́ mú yín fáwọn tí ì mú ni. Mọ́ fà yín mọ́ mú yín fáwọn tí ì mú ni. Tí múni tẹ́ múni tẹ́ wọ́n ò lè gbà yẹn lẹ̀ o. Máa yín fáwọn tí ì mú ni. Kọ́wọ́ láàfà wọ́tá Júlíà dábì máa mọ̀ yín máa fà yín. Kọ́wọ́ láàfù àjí bàbá àgbáyé máa mọ̀ yín máa fà yín. Kọ́wọ́ wọlá ayé gbà mí bàbá mi lọ́ba máa mọ̀ yín máa fà yín. Àtẹ̀yìn àtàwọn àfa àtàjọ wá lápapọ̀ ọlọ́mọ mọ́ ní kọ̀kẹ́yìn alága wa tó jẹ́ alága ìjọba ní gbogbo olùkọ́ ọlọ́mọ mọ́ wọn náà ààrẹ wa ọlọ́mọ mú wọn bàbá wa ifá wàrù Muhammadu Jami ifá ọkùnrin takuntakun lójú ogun Ìgbòho ifá gbogbo kárí ayé ó ti di jẹ́nẹ́rà ọlọ́run kọ́ wọlé àtúntòdì àná Muhammad ọlọ́run mọ́ mú yín mọ́ fà yín lẹ́yìn tó mú yín lọ́wọ́ àkútà yóò ní mú yín táǹkà yóò ní mú yín tìjọba yóò ní mú yín bàbá wa olú ọmọ Ìgbòho bàbá Dami ibi tó wà yẹn òun kọ́ àwọn kọ́ ṣe bọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run ni àwọn kọ́ ṣe bọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run ni. ẹ jẹ́ gbá pé àwọn kọ́ ó wọ Ọlọ́run ni àwọn kọ́ ó wọ Ọlọ́run ni. ibi tí bàbá Ádámì tó wà yẹn àwọn kọ́ ó wọ Ọlọ́run ni. ìsílẹ̀ rẹ̀ kọjá rírọ̀rùn àwọn kọ́ ó wọ Ọlọ́run ni. bàbá Ádámì kó dé ní ìrọ̀rùn àwọn kọ́ ó wọ Ọlọ́run ni. Sunday Igboho bàbá Dami òòṣà gbogbo ẹni tí máa ń pètòpèrò kókó kú òun ni kò mọ kú. àwọn ní kúkú ọmọ pa àwọn ní kárùn ọmọ pa kí dààmú ọmọdé bá wọ́n ní bájá bá wọlé tọ ẹkùn máa ń fi ẹ̀jẹ̀ wẹ̀. wọ́n wá ní ajá àbí ká sọ pé wọ́n ní ìkòkò àtajá tó máa pàdé ara wọn ajá ìnáwó fẹsẹ̀ jẹ̀wẹ̀. ibi tí bàbá Dami wà ó yèrè Ọlọ́run ọ̀ fẹ́ pa ni o sì fẹ́ yẹn lè mọ̀ ọwọ́ sèfù ẹ̀ síbẹ̀ ń wà àwọn tó sèfù ẹ̀ sí ni wọ́n pa síbẹ̀ ń wà. ìjọ́jáde láyọ̀ èrò ọ̀tá mọ̀sẹ̀ lórí ẹ̀ gbogbo ọ̀nà ẹ̀ta wá dúró yìí nínú kòtò ọ̀tá la wà Ọlọ́run ní fàyẹ̀ yọ ẹnì kọ̀ọ̀kan náà mọ́jà ta orí ajé o ọ̀là kúdúrọ̀ ọ̀là ìrádà ẹ wá jẹ́ àtẹ́wọ̀ síwájú ká sọ pé Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín lọ́wọ́ rẹ̀ bàbá Dami Allahumma àmín lọ́wọ́ rẹ̀ ọba yàrá bí o Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín Allahumma àtajúlé àdáàbí Allahumma àmín Musa mi Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín Allahumma àmín wala quwwata illa billahi. Alam tara kayfa al-jama'atu rahma. Alam tara kayfa bó tilẹ̀ ògùn wọn pílánì tó pílánì tàwọn àṣàbùlì fíìlì ju pílánì tẹ́lẹ̀ yìí lọ.
lórí ìlú Ìgbò àti lórí gbogbo ilẹ̀ Yorùbá.
gbogbo ìdíjà rẹ̀ bàbá wa sáyẹn pílánì àwọn Fúlàní wọ́n gbé sí ọwọ́ Gunmin òun wá dára pẹ̀lú àwọn federal government. Àwọn federal government wọ́n rán òun ṣe iṣẹ́ wèrè pé máa ṣe káàkiri ayé. Alam tara kayfa ẹyọ kọ̀ọ̀kan gbogbo ọmọ ìbá tó bá lógún ní fámìlì báyìí nísìnyí kó fogun fámìlì ẹ̀ lẹ̀. Ogun fámìlì tí ẹ fẹ́ máa jà yẹn òun kéré gidi gan. Ogun tí ó wà níta nísìnyí front camera mo ń lò ní. Ogun tó wà níta nísìnyí ogun tí ó pa àwọn fámìlì rẹ̀ run ni wọ́n ń gbé bọ̀ yẹn. Alam tara kayfa ẹyọ kan tó ní bísímìláyì nínú bó ṣe léwu kí plan yẹn ó sọ́lìdì tó Ọlọ́run bá wa dàáwó. Gbogbo ẹni bá ti wá ké tó ogun bá ṣẹlẹ̀ yóò máa kàn àwọn kókù láyé ni. Àwọn táwọn jọ ké báyìí Ọlọ́run mọ́sá àyọ̀ǹda wa káwọn ọmọ wà láyé tiwa nírọ̀rùn. Tọ́lá wọn fẹ́ tó yẹ kí wọ́n sọ pé sùkẹ̀ àlékún sùkẹ̀ irú wọn ní má wulẹ̀ bá a ké wọ́n máa ní irú wọn ẹ má wulẹ̀ ké títí ṣùgbọ́n ẹ wọ́n pẹ́ ní pé Insha Allah Alam tara kayfa ẹyọ kan tó ní bísímìláyì nínú àwọn táwọn òkú bẹ́ẹ̀ wà nù nira yẹn Ọlọ́run bá fara dẹ̀ wọ́n. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil wa arsala alayhim tayran ababil tarmihim bihijaaratin min sijil faj'alahum ka'asfin ma'kul.
Ẹyọ kan tó kù Allahumma salli ala salatil fati àbí kílẹ̀ mọ̀ pé tí àwọn Gunmin ní bọ́kọ̀ dá òun àwọn akẹ́yọ̀ kan sí. Bàbá wa sí Mudazir. Mo ti ara Alhaji wa Fọwẹ́wẹ́ mo fi mọ ọmọ kéwọn wọn Alhaji wa Alifa sí Onurakim. Àwọn ni mo kọ́ pé láàárọ̀ yìí pé a fẹ́ wò Ìgbòho. Wọ́n wá tọ́ pé báyìí nìkan gbà báyìí nìkan gbà a sì rìn lọ́rùn ọlọ́dẹ sí rọrùn. Àtúwá débì òtún wá bá ẹgbẹ́ mi Ifá ẹgbẹ́ mi lọ́dún oyo àfa àti bá ti rí àwọn eléyìí ìyá rẹ̀ ò lè nà mí àwọn tó dúró ti rí àwọn eléyìí ìyá rẹ̀ ò lè bẹ́ wàláì tàláì àtúwá pàdé wọn bì Salatul Fati àwa tí ẹ̀mí wa ń bẹ nísìnyí torí bàbá wa ṣé Mudazir ṣe a ti mọ̀ wọ́n ní wòlíì nísìnyí wọ́n ti pẹ́ gé o wọn wàá gbẹ́fẹ́ nìkan káráyé ṣé Ibrahim nìkan náà gbà fún tọ́lá wà pé ṣé Ibrahim àwọn gẹ́gẹ́ lànà Muhammad ànábì ni Ọlọ́run
àbí ṣé bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́ dìbò kí n kọ́ níbẹ̀ kọ́ ewu wàláì bẹ́ẹ̀ ni wí ti ẹ̀dá káwọn kí bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́ ṣé sọ̀rọ̀dìlì fàtì yẹn káwá ké gbogbo àwọn tá à ń bẹ nísìn má jẹ́ ká fi ẹnu ọ̀sọ̀rọ̀tì tá a bá pín tán ọlọ́mọdé kan fi kúrò ọlọ́run rẹ̀ sí gbogbo ayé yẹn sọ̀rọ̀dìlì fàtì aláwọ̀ sọ̀rọ̀ àlá sẹ́yìn سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام
ẹ káàbọ̀ padà àní ó ń bọ̀ àwọn ládẹ́ẹ̀dẹ́ oní Yorùbá sọ àwọn ará Ìgbòho olè ń wò yìí tó bá ti joyè wọn ò ní wọ́n fohùn lẹ̀ láti wá kí àwọn tí mo sọ lánàá lẹ́yìn wípé àwọn ará Ìgbòho mọ̀ pé Gumi wá o kódà èèyàn péréte báyìí ló fojú kan Gumi ẹ̀yìnkùlé ló sì gbà wọlé òun náà lẹ́yìn náà ti gbọ́ yẹn látẹnu àfà Abdulhakeem àti àwọn aráàlú káàkiri ni wọ́n ti ń sọ̀rọ̀ ṣe Yorùbá bọ̀ wọ́n ní má foko mi dáná ọjọ́ kan báyìí náà là ń ṣòfin ẹ̀ àwọn ará Ìgbòho ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣòfin nìyẹn n tó dé mi lójú ni pé láìpẹ́ láì jìnà ohun tí Gumi wá ṣe ní ìlú Ìgbòho àṣírí fẹ́ẹ̀ túná ṣe Yorùbá ní tó lóde ò bá kú òdi ẹ̀kú ìwú gbẹ́gì àìsí ilé ológìnní ló múlé dilé èkúté ta ló ń jẹ́ bàbá Gumi nígbà tí Ìgbòho wà Nàìjíríà gbogbo ìgbà tọ́rọ̀ ń gbóná girigiri kí ló dé tí Gumi ò lọ sí Ìgbòho kó lóun wá bẹ̀ wá ṣe nǹkan kan àmọ́ gbà tó kú ti mọ̀ pé olóde ò sí lé ló jẹ́ kó máa fi òde ẹ̀wú gbẹ́gi àìsílé ológìnní ló múlé dilé èkúté èmi mọ̀ pàṣírí fẹ́ẹ̀ tú láìpẹ́ ohun tí Gumi wá ṣe ní ibẹ̀ ní ìlú Ìgbòho láìpẹ́ yìí ni Gumi kan ṣòyìn náà tá a bá gbàgbé ló ń sọ pé àwọn agbénipa yìí àwọn onísùmọ̀mí àwọn darandaran àwọn ọ̀daràn tí wọ́n ń pè ní darandaran tó wà nù Fúlàní àwọn Fúlàní agbébọn ó ní kò síbi tí wọ́n lè lọ ó ní kò síbi tí wọ́n ó lọ kò sì sẹ́ni tó lè dúnkokò mọ́ wọn ṣáà gbàgbé wípé Gumi sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ẹnìkan ti wá dá lóhùn o tó sì yà mí lẹ́nu pé ó lè dá lóhùn bẹ́ẹ̀ òun náà ni agbẹnusọ fún iléeṣẹ́ ìjọba àpapọ̀ ẹni tí a mọ̀ sí Olúwafẹ́mi Adésínà ó ní kí Gumi gbẹnu sọ́hùn o ó níbi tí Miyetti ó níbi táwọn Fúlàní agbébọn tí ó lọ náà ní inú iná àjò òkú pátápátá tí a mọ̀ sí Hellfire ó ní Hellfire ni wọ́n ń lọ abẹ́ ti gbàgbé ọ̀rọ̀ yìí ni bí ìjẹta àbíjọ́ Monday ó ní mo wá sọ ọ̀rọ̀ náà tí Gumi sọ pé ẹ panumọ́ o gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ń sọ pé Miyetti tẹ́ ń sọ pé Fúlàní ṣe nǹkan kan àwọn Fúlàní agbénipa ṣe nǹkan kan ó ní kò síbi tí wọ́n ó lọ kò sì sẹ́ni tó lè dúnkokò mọ́ wọn àyàfi ìgbà tí federal government ìjọba àpapọ̀ àfi tó bá fún wọn ní amnesty bí ìtàn ṣe fún àwọn south ó nígbà náà ni wọ́n ó tó dákẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ lásán tó sọ yìí tó bá jẹ́ pé níbi tí ò ti sójú ṣáájú ni lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ yóò yẹ kí DSS ti lọ dọ̀yà Gumi pẹ̀lú ọ̀rọ̀ kékeré tó rọra sọ yìí torí pé ọ̀rọ̀ tí wọ́n ń pè ní violence talk ni ọ̀rọ̀ tó lè dàlúrú ni Ìgbòho sọlájì tí wọ́n ti gbé tí wọ́n ti ń dà lé ẹ̀rù tí wọ́n ti fẹ́ gbé àmọ́ lónìí Gumi ti sọ ní tó jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ lọ́nà ọgọ́rùn-ún ó sì ó ń rìn freely láàrin ìlú bí ẹni pé kò sí nǹkan kan ẹ jẹ́ ń tún refresh brain wa ẹ jẹ́ ń dá fídíò yẹn padà kárí mò ń bọ̀.
The herdsmen, they are going nowhere. They are part of us and we are part of them. We must live with them. You can't drive them away and they can't drive us away. They are our neighbors, so we should never allow them to be our enemies. And if by any mistakes, by our actions, we have turned them into enemies, then we are finished. Because our real enemy will use them against us. As your real enemy will use your neighbor against you. And nobody knows your secret more than your neighbor. He knows when you come back and when you go out. So we should never allow herdsmen to be our enemies.
Ọtí Gunmin sọ òun láwo yìí. Èsì tí Fẹ́mi Adésínà náà wà fún ni pé Fẹ́mi Adésínà ní kó gbẹ́nu sọ́hùn. Kó yé sọ̀rọ̀ tí ó dà lúrú mọ́. Ẹni tó yè mí lẹ́nu ni Fẹ́mi Adésínà. Ó yà mí létè pàápàá pé Fẹ́mi Adésínà lè sọ̀rọ̀ torí pé ara wọn ni. Ẹ̀yìn wọn lòun náà wà digbí. Àmọ́ ètò sọ yìí, èyí tó dùn mọ́ mi désàlẹ̀ ẹkùn mi ni. Ó ní kí Miyetti Allah àti Gunmin ó ní kí wọ́n gbẹ́nu sọ́hùn. Ó ní tó bá sọ pé kò síbi tí àwọn Fúlàní agbénipa ó lọ. Ó nínú náà àjò òkúta mọ̀sẹ́lì fàyà ni wọ́n lọ o. Ó ní kó yé sọ àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ tí ó dà lúrú mọ́. Ó láwọn tó sọhun, ó láwọn tí ó dà lúrú ni. Àmọ́ bókànrún ẹnu tí Fẹ́mi Adésínà fi sọ̀rọ̀ yìí. Ṣebí ṣe ló yẹ kí wọ́n ní kí àwọn DSS kí wọ́n lọ dọ̀yà ha Gunmin kí wọ́n lọ gbé. Ó rìn freely láàrin ìlú ó sì ṣe tóhun ni. Kódà ọ̀rọ̀ náà le débi pé Miyetti Allah ẹnìkan mà sọ o wípé Miyetti Allah ló ń rúlu Nàìjíríà o wípé àwọn gan ni wọ́n ń pàṣẹ kì í ṣe aláṣẹ ló ń pàṣẹ. Tálẹ́ni tó sọ eléyìí bí kò ń ṣe gómìnà Benue State Samuel Ortom. Gbogbo àná la kúkú mọ̀ pé ẹni tó nípọn láyà bí rẹ̀ ni tí òkúkú ràn yàn ṣẹ́ kò bẹ̀rù ọba kò bẹ̀rù joyè kò bẹ̀rù ẹnikẹ́ni ó dúró lórí òdodo ó sì lóhun ó sòdodo tóhun fi kù ni. Ó ní Miyetti Allah àwọn ni wọ́n ń pàṣẹ ní Nàìjíríà o. Ó níbi tí wọ́n bá fẹ́ kí wọ́n darí Nàìjíríà sí òun náà ni wọ́n dá sí ṣérọ́ ló pa. Ẹni tí ó jẹ́ agbẹnusọ fún Miyetti Allah tó sọ ọ̀rọ̀ yìí òun náà ni Commissioner for Information and Tourism ní ìlú Benue State. Orúkọ arábìnrin náà máa jẹ́ Mrs. Nguna Adinsi. Nguna Adinsi yìí ló sọ ọ̀rọ̀ yìí ló sọ pé Miyetti Allah tẹ́rì ni àwọn ni wọ́n ń pàṣẹ ìlú Nàìjíríà tí kì bá wa ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀. Gunmin a máa pàṣẹ ta ni Miyetti Allah Gunmin ni ta ni Gunmin Miyetti Allah. Gunmin ni ẹni tó ń bá wọn agbénipa àwọn Fúlàní agbébọn òun náà ní advocator wọn. Inú Miyetti Allah sì ni wọ́n ti wá. Àwọn náà ni Miyetti Allah. Àwọn ni wọ́n pàṣẹ Nàìjíríà àwọn ni wọ́n pàṣẹ ìlú yìí. Ohun tó bá fẹ́ kí Nàìjíríà rí ni ó rí. Ohun tí wọn ò bá fẹ́ kó rí kò sẹ́ni tó lè sọ pé kí wọ́n rí. Òun ló ṣe jẹ́ pé Ortom náà fi sọ pé kí wọ́n panu wọn mọ́ o. Àwọn ni wọ́n ń pàṣẹ ìlú Nàìjíríà. Bákan náà ni pé àwọn Miyetti Allah kan ṣo inú àwọn Fúlàní agbénipa yìí. Ṣé ẹ mọ̀ pé Yorùbá ní tí aburú bá ṣẹlẹ̀ sí aráàlú wọ́n á nírun bí lọ lù ú. Ṣùgbọ́n tó bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣẹlẹ̀ sọ́ba kí ni wọ́n á wí? Wọ́n ní irun bí wọ̀lú o wọ́n á ní èèmọ̀ wọ̀lú. Ohun gan náà ló ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo fẹ́ sọ yìí. Olóyè Matthew Aremu Ọbásanjọ́ ẹ gbàgbé bí ìjẹta àbíjẹrìn la sọ pé àwọn òṣìṣẹ́ rẹ̀ mẹ́ta òun làwọn agbésùmọ̀mí àwọn agbébọn Fúlàní agbénipa yìí òun ni wọ́n lọ gbé mẹ́ta nínú àwọn òṣìṣẹ́ ẹ̀ ní Ọbáfẹ́mi Owódé local government. Tó àwọn ọlọ́pàá ti sọ pé tọ́básanjọ́ fọkànbalẹ̀ o wípé àwọn rí dájú wípé àwọn gbà wọn mẹ́tẹ̀ẹ̀ta. Ṣùgbọ́n mo fẹ́ fi yé wa wípé lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ bá ti sọ̀rọ̀ yìí àwọn Fúlàní agbénipa yìí ti sọ pé àfi kí wọ́n lọ mówó wá o tí wọ́n bá fẹ́ gba àwọn ẹni yìí lọ́wọ́ àwọn. Odindi Ọbásanjọ́ lọ́hùn ni wọ́n ń bá wí yìí. In tó wá dùn mọ́ mi ni wípé ó ti ń kan bábọ̀ ó ti ń kàn joyè bọ̀. Mo sọ ń bí lànà wípé láìpẹ́ báwọn ará bí ìṣe ń bọ̀rọ̀ yìí bọ̀ wọ́n á fẹ́ dá aṣọ rọ̀ọ̀kì láìpẹ́ yìí. Díẹ̀díẹ̀ wọ́n ti ń súnlẹ̀ rí yìí nígbà tí wọn ò bẹ̀rù odindi Ọbásanjọ́ tí wọ́n lọ gbé mẹ́ta nínú àwọn òṣìṣẹ́ ẹ̀. Tó bá jẹ́ pé Ọbásanjọ́ wà nínú mọ́tò yẹn ńkọ́ kí lẹ rò pé ó fẹ́ ṣẹlẹ̀? Oyè tó kan ará Ìwó ni láìpẹ́ láì jìnnà ó ti ń sún díẹ̀díẹ̀ láti wá kanra ẹ̀dẹ̀. Ó lè mí ṣe ń pe àwọn tí wọ́n jábẹ́nu gan lù ú wípé ẹ tètè wá nǹkan ṣe sí i. Èmi dà mọ̀ pé lóyè Ọbásanjọ́ náà ó tètè sọ̀rọ̀ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ báwọn Fúlàní agbénipa yìí bí wọ́n ti ṣe ń gbọ́mọdé gbá pàpà. èyí tó dùn mọ́ mi ni pé ó ti ń kanrú wọn ní ìsìn irú wọn náà ti ń dàmọ̀. àtọ́dún yìí tá a ti ń pariwo wípé àwọn ẹni yìí ń pa kúkúrú, wọ́n pa gúngùn, wọ́n ń pa obìnrin, wọ́n ń pa ọkùnrin. àgbọ̀ o kólóyè Ọbásanjọ́ náà bá wa dá sí wípé dandan Fúlàní must stop. bókọ̀ràn yẹn olóyè Ọbásanjọ́ láwọn nígbàgbọ́ sí wọn Nàìjíríà, èmi náà nígbàgbọ́ sí wọn Nàìjíríà. kódà ó dùn mọ́ mi kí Nàìjíríà máa lọ bá ti ṣe lọ, àmọ́ nígbà tó ti di pé kí wọ́n máa gbé wa pa tá a lè sùn ká dijú nínú ìlú bàbá wa, ká fi ká wá nǹkan ṣe sí o. bólórí bá máa gbórí rẹ̀, bẹ́lẹ́sẹ̀ bá máa gbẹ́sẹ̀ rẹ̀, bálápá bá máa gbápá. èmi kì í ní ìdúró lé lórí dáadáa wípé ẹ jẹ́ kó ní kálukú kan lọ mú dánmú ìyẹ́ gbé. tó bá ti jẹ́ pé Fúlàní ó máa gbé wa pálẹ̀ Yorùbá ni tí ò sì sẹ́nikẹ́ni tó lè bì wọ́n lọ́wọ́ wò, ẹni bá sì tún ṣe tán láti bì wọ́n lọ́wọ́ wò ẹ gbé sátìmọ́ ni. Lady K wà níbi tó wà, kódà wọ́n ní terrorist ni, nítorí ipò ń sọ pé àní Fúlàní kan máa pa wá mọ́. olóyè Sunday Igboho wà níbi tó wà tí ò lè wọ̀lú bàbá tá a ti bí mọ́. lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ yìí sì kò tó bẹ́ẹ̀ kó lóun bọ̀ Nàìjíríà, wọ́n ti dẹ pápẹ́lẹ̀ tí wọ́n fẹ́ fi mú. kí dẹ̀ ló ń sọ? ó ní kí Fúlàní má pa wá mọ́. olóyè Olúṣẹ́gun Ọbásanjọ́ ó dá mi lójú sí wípé àwọn náà wà láti ilẹ̀ dáadáa, wọ́n á wá gbọ́ gbogbo ohun tí Igboho sọ, torí pé ó ti kàn àwọn náà ní ìsìn. àlóyè tó karáàwò ó ti dé, ó ti kàrẹ́ ẹ̀dẹ́. ẹ jẹ́ káwọn náà káwo kí náà fẹ́ ṣe sí. mẹ́ta tọ̀ntọ̀n ní òṣìṣẹ́ wọn ò ní àwọn Fúlàní ìgbé. nígbà táwọn náà bá àbí ó sá ti dandan tán bá máa gba àwọn ẹni yìí lẹ̀, Fúlàní láwọn á gbowó, àwọn àmì ní àwọn àwa wọn kan, àwọn ọlọ́pàá láwọn àwa wọn kan. ẹ jẹ́ á máa wo kí ló fẹ́ ṣẹlẹ̀. kọkùnrin tàtọ̀rìn, kóbìnrin tàtọ̀rìn, káwé wo ni ó ní omi lẹ́yìn ẹsẹ̀ jura wọn lọ. ohun tó kàn máa ń dùn mí ni pé táwọn Fúlàní ìbá ti rí pé wàhálà yẹn pọ̀ lórí àwọn táwọn gbé, ìpakúpa ni wọ́n máa ń pa wọ́n dànù. Ọlọ́run Elédùmarè ò ní jẹ́ kí wọ́n pa àwọn mẹ́tẹ̀ẹ̀ta. àdúrà mi sọ́lọ́run náà ni pé kí wọ́n rí wọn gbà, kán sì dé ọ̀dọ̀ ẹbí wọn, àwọn káwọn náà fojú rí ẹbí wọn padà, kẹbí náà sì fojú rí wọn láyọ̀ àtàlàáfíà. Ọlọ́run ò ní jẹ́ àṣìṣẹ́ ṣe kọ́ láti ṣìlú yàn báyìí. àbí ọkùnrin kò sáàbò, obìnrin kò sáàbò, onílé kò sáàbò, àlejò kò sáàbò. lórí Nàìjíríà kan ṣoì náà ni ó di kẹ́rù máa bàyàn. tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ àwọn ẹni selective process ni wọ́n ń lò, wọ́n máa ń wo ta náà fẹ́ gbé, àmọ́ nísìnyí rárá o, wọn ò mọ̀gá, wọn ò mọ̀mọ́ṣẹ́, kò sẹ́ni tí wọn ò lè gbé. Ṣéhù Sànní ó wá ti sọ̀rọ̀ lórí àwọn mẹ́ta tí wọ́n gbé nílé Ọbásanjọ́ yìí, ní àwọn òṣìṣẹ́ Ọbásanjọ́ mẹ́ta tí wọ́n gbé yìí. in tí mò ń sọ ìgan lòun náà ń sọ tó, ó ní ó di dandan sí báyìí o káwọn má sàsùnpara, àwọn ò gbọ́dọ̀ sàsùnpìyè mọ́, torí pé ikú tó ń pojú gbẹ ni olówó ní pamọ́ ni. Ṣéhù Sànní náà sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ wípé tó kò sáàbò kankan mọ́ nílùú Nàìjíríà yìí lóòótọ́ o, fún wọn láti lọ gbé odindi òṣìṣẹ́ odindi Ọbásanjọ́, ó ní kò sẹ́ni tí àwọn Fúlàní yóò tún lè gbé mọ́. Ṣéhù Sànní náà ti sọ̀rọ̀, ó sọ̀rọ̀ bẹ̀rù, ìtẹ́rù bòun náà pé tó ibi tọ́rọ̀ yìí ń lọ o, àfi ká tètè wá nǹkan ṣe sí i. ntẹ́mi náà dẹ̀ ń sọ látijọ́ yìí òun náà rèé wípé tá a bá ṣọ́ra, ibi táwọn Fúlàní yìí ń bọ́rọ̀ yìí bọ̀, àwọn eléyìí ò mẹ́nikẹ́ni. kódà tílẹ̀ Yorùbá mo tún fẹ́ sọ pé ṣẹ́pẹ́rẹ́ díẹ̀ láàrin tàwọn ilẹ̀ Haúsá. ìdí èyí náà ló fà á tó fi jẹ́ pé gbogbo àwọn gómìnà ilẹ̀ gúúsù Nàìjíríà ni wọ́n sọ pé dandan àfi kí àwọn gbé òfin jáde lórí àwọn Fúlàní tí ń dẹran kiri. mo ti ń bá yín sọ̀rọ̀ yìí, wọ́n dúnkokò mẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lánàá. tẹ́ ẹ bá buwọ́lù àbádòfin yìí, ẹ máa ra màálùú 2 million lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ni. àwọn ará Èkó náà wá fi hàn wọ́n wípé ọmọ ọkọ̀ háún làwọn, àwọn kì í ṣọmọ àlè. nítorí pé bí mo ti ń bá yín sọ̀rọ̀ yìí, Muisi Banire tí ń ṣe Speaker Lagos State, òun àti àwọn ọmọ ìgbìmọ̀ aṣòfin tán wà lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ tá a mọ̀ sí Lagos State House of Assembly, gbogbo wọn mà ti bu ọwọ́ lu àbádòfin ní ìlú Èkó lórí open grazing. láti àná lọ open grazing lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ìmáa da ẹran kiri Fúlàní lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ó ti dèèwọ̀ Fúlàní tó ń bá gbámú lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ wípé ó ń dẹran kiri nínú igbó ni àbí nígboro àbó lọ sápamọ́ sínú igbó kan tó ní dẹrandaran lòun tó tọwọ́ òfin bá tó janto ní o. Ẹ gbàgbé pé Fúlàní náà ti sọ pé dandan tí Lagos State bá buwọ́ lu òfin yìí 1 million 2 million ni wọ́n máa ra màálù. Ó yẹ jẹ́ àwò kí ló fẹ́ ṣẹlẹ̀ o. Bóyá lóòótọ́ ni wọ́n máa ta màálù ní 2 million naira lẹ́kọ̀ọ́. Bóyá nítorí tí wọ́n sọ yìí bóyá Èkó àtún sọ pé àwọn ò bọwọ́ lu òfin mọ́ wọ́n ti buwọ́ lu already. Ẹ jẹ́ ká wo bí wọ́n ti buwọ́ lu òfin yìí nílùú Èkó lánàá àti pé lẹ́yìn tó buwọ́ lu tán àwọn kan tí wọ́n interview kí ni wọ́n sọ lórí ìbuwọ́lù òfin yìí ní Lagos State. Mò ń padà bọ̀ mo fẹ́ ká lọ wo kí ló ṣẹlẹ̀.
It's an issue that has turned controversial in recent months as states begin to push for the collection of value-added tax VAT, and one of the states victorious in this cause is Rivers State, which recently got a court judgment in its favor. Disagreements on VAT have long been an issue between Lagos State government and the Federal Inland Revenue Service, even before Rivers State won its case against the FIRS. The state government is progressing towards taking charge of its own VAT collection after the House of Assembly passed a bill for a law to impose and charge value-added tax on certain foods and services.
That a bill for a law to impose and charge value-added tax on certain goods and services provided for the administration of the tax and for other related matters be read for the third time. I so move.
A bill for a law to impose and charge value-added tax on certain goods and services provide for the administration of the tax and for connected purposes be passed into law. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those against nay, the ayes have it.
One other contentious issue dealt with is anti-open grazing, as Lagos State also passes a law banning it, towing the line of other states.
To prohibit open cattle grazing and the trespass of cattle on land in Lagos State, I so believe.
That a bill for a law to prohibit open cattle grazing in Lagos State, the trespass of cattle on land, and for other connected purposes be passed into law. All in favor say aye. Aye. Against nay, the ayes have it.
The two bills were passed after unanimous votes by the lawmakers and copies transmitted to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for assent.
We have this morning two gentlemen here in the studio. Bulus Atsen is the chairman of the Nigeria Bar Association here in Abuja. And then we also have with us Mr. Usman Baba Ngerzama, who is the national secretary of the Miyetti Ala Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Well, quite a bit of background to provide to our viewers this morning, but I think it's very important that they understand the context, even though I imagine that those who have been following the news would have been able to, put into context what is happening. But just in case anyone has missed any part, this is a situation that we have today. Lagos State has joined a number of states that have passed the anti-open grazing bill into law. Let me first of all ask you, Sir Baba Ngerzama, how, because I do know that I think it was your association that made an appeal to the Lagos State government. Was it your own association? Because we do know that there's Miyetti Ala Kauta Hore and there's yours. Are they a faction of your group, or how is your relationship with them?
No, it's never a faction. It's a duly registered association, just like the Magban. Though we have large followership, and we are in existence for nearly 40 years now. And ours is a democratic one. We came in through election, and we definitely go out through election. But the other group are there, duly registered by the CSE. We always wonder why the CSE will even accept to register in the same name for the same purpose. But because the security situation, what our members are going through now is what concerns us. So in-house fighting is not our priority now. All we want to see is how our members can coexist peacefully with the farmers across the country, because Magban has branches in the 36 states of the Federation and in most of the local governments. So we have members living across every part of Nigeria for decades. In fact, some were born and brought up there. I can correct the minds of some Yoruba leaders who misquoted me, and the other time I granted interview to Arise TV, alleging that I want to claim my members of Fulanis to claim the Yoruba ancestral land. I've never said that. All I said that was there are Fulanis whose parents were born and brought up in those areas. Go to Ogun and Oyo, you find a lot of them there who only understand Yoruba and Fulfulde. Does that make them Southerners? No. They know they are Northerners and they are seen as one, and they know they are one. They are Northerners. It's just like the Igbos we have living in Kano and the Yorubas we have living in Plateau and Kano. They are there, their parents were born there, they are brought up there. But does that make them Northerners? No. They see themselves as Southerners, no matter how long they will stay there. And the entire community also sees them as Southerners. But the fact that they were born and brought up there, that makes them indigenous of those areas. Let me give you an example. I have one family in my village in Geldarma, where I was born and brought up. I have a family of Adele Ainde. I grew up and saw them there. We attended the same primary school as the children. Adele was my mate. We attended the same primary school. He went to Damatru Secondary School. He was given indigent of my local government, Fune and Geldarma. He later died after graduating and taking the service of the custom. But Tony and Bose are still living in Geldarma. They have enjoyed our indigenship. They have taken the employment of our local government. They are still there. Tony has already retired, but she's still living in Geldarma, speaking her Yoruba language, practicing her Christian religion. Can we allow somebody to go and touch her today? No, we see her as one of us. She's still living there with her children, and Bose too. They are there. So, but that notwithstanding, did this make them Northerners? No. They still see themselves as Southerners, Yorubas from the South. We also see them as one. But that does not stop us from recognizing them as our own indigenous, because we grew up together, we saw them there. So
it's a tricky one, because I do know that that's something that has been a bone of contention in many instances in Nigeria. You know, people have said that we should ditch indigenship and, you know, embrace residency as the way to recognize where people are from. But I mean, that we'll see how that influences this particular discussion. What I'd like to know is what how this, when the Southern governors reached their resolution, what were the immediate reactions of your own association?
Well, you see, we as civilized people, we know that the state governors have the responsibility of their areas. We know that they are the chief security officers of their state, and we know that the Land Tenure Act arrested the power for utilization of land to governors, to those states. We very much know that, and we very much know that the houses of assembly in respective states are responsible for making laws affecting the socio-economic activities of that particular state. We all know this as civilized people. So where a law is made by a body that is constitutionally recognized to make laws, what can you say? Whether good or bad, a law is there. But the processes is what we always have problems. In the processes, if a law is going to be made in a particular community, that law is supposed to bring peace and harmony. That is why laws are made in communities, to foster peace and harmony in that particular community. So, and those that can be affected by the law, directly or indirectly, are normally invited for dialogue under what you call it public hearing, so that they can also view their own interests. They can make people understand how they live, how they practice their trade, so that they can also be, the activity can also be protected by that law. But in most places where the law is made, our members are not taken alone as critical stakeholders, because the anti-open grazing law directly affects our members. So where they are going to be affected as Nigerians, I think their interests must also be covered by the law to some extent.
So what I understand is that you're saying you didn't get any invitation from the state governments?
In some of the states,
Yes.
our members are invited, but in Lagos in particular, I saw our members attending the public hearing. But you know, Lagos has a peculiar problem, because you don't find a lot of pastoralists in Lagos. I think we have them in not more than 1, 2, 3 local governments. But the cow merchants normally buy cow in their large numbers, bring them to Lagos, keep them in the forest. After 2, 3 months, they bring them to the market and sell. And those are not necessarily Fulanis. Though Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeder Association is for every cattle breeder across the country, whether you are Fulani or not. If you take our cat to become a member, you automatically become our member if you rear cattle. So you find a lot of these merchants keeping cows in outskirts of Lagos. Then after a while, they bring them to the market and sell. Lagos law has invited our members as critical stakeholders to come and air their views. So we are now waiting for the outcome and seeing whether the interests of those members are protected or not. Secondly, people are talking of ranching. We are never opposed to any form of settlement that can bring peace, because we know settling the pastoralists is the only way out of this crisis we have. Because you cannot continue with what you are doing 50 years back and still continue to do it today in the modern world of today. That means there's no progress. So we know that change is necessary. Change is always there for us, whether we like it or not. So, but you have a pastoralist society that has not changed from the primitive system of animal husbandry that is practicing 50 years back, is still doing the same thing. Why? It's not his own fault, because there was no attempt by the first succeeding administration to try to modernize, to teach them how to teach him how to modernize his trade. So he's still practicing the only thing he knows and the only thing he believes in doing, roaming the wild, looking for free pasture. But this era is about to be over now, considering the growth in population of both animal and human beings against a land that doesn't increase. So there has to be a way on how to plan these things for the pastoralists and the farmers to coexist peacefully. And ranching has so many models. Let me give you an example of one. The New Zealand ranch model, they call it Maori land settlement model. That Maori land settlement model involves the development of the entire grazing reserve, so leaving the pastoralists to continue to live in their traditional local setting, but within a confined area that is called ranch, where pasture and no water will be provided. So there are so many models to ranch. It's not, most of our pastoralists are smallholder farmers. They cannot afford to go for the modern ranch that everybody is looking for in this country. They don't have the education, they don't have the skills, and even the number of the cows they have cannot allow them to venture into this type of modern ranching that we always agitate for, because it's capital intensive. How many cows do they have? All these cows that you see, 100, 200 with families living, moving with them, belongs to the entire family. If it is going to be shared, nobody will get more than 50 cows out of that number, because they inherited it, and they also want to die and leave more cows for their family, for their children to also inherit, because they don't bloody care with the quality of the cow. What they care much is the quantity, because they got them through inheritance, so they want to die and leave more cows for their children to also inherit, because your society your status in the society you live is always determined by the number of cows you have. The more cows you have, the more big man you become in the society you live. So these are things that the public must know.
Indeed, and certainly must put in context as the conversation proceeds. So let me ask you, Mr. Atsen, because even though Mr. Ngazarma has, differentiated his own association from the other association, Miyetti Allah Kauta Hore. We cannot dismiss, you know, how will I put it now, the words of the other Miyetti Allah group that have threatened to sue. Perhaps, you know, we can listen to parts of that particular, you know, of the conversation or the press conference which they granted, threatening to sue the states, you know, saying that what they were doing was illegal. They had some pretty strong words for the states. I'm wondering, as a lawyer, when you saw that particular track, how did it hit you?
Well, first we need to put the issues in proper perspective. The State House of Assembly, which seeks to enact a law banning or restricting open grazing, just as Mr. Usman said, is doing so within its constitutional powers. And if there are people or group of people who feel strongly or however convicted they are that the law infringes on their rights as citizens of Nigeria, they reserve the right to go to court. So if going to court is the option that they've taken, I will say kudos to them. That's the right thing to do. However, talking about the law banning open grazing reserve, open grazing, it's something that is a long time coming. It didn't just happen. There are issues which precipitated the enactment of this law. Benue State enacted it since 2017. It was clear that so many other states were going to take a cue from that. If the issues that encouraged Benue to take that path continued in those other states. So it wasn't surprising when the southern states governors came together and decided on this path as a solution to the myriads of crises that were generated as a result of open grazing. So going to court, to me, it's okay.
Yeah, but I do not know if you saw that particular video. Did you see it?
Yes, I saw it. I watched it.
I mean, the language was a bit aggressive. Do you think that it was, I mean, does it already say what is going to happen in court, for instance? I mean, and the stance and the mode, or the, let's say, the mood of those who are going to court? I don't know, because this is supposed to bring peace. It's supposed to be a solution to a problem. Lives have been lost. Conflict keeps on, you know, keeps happening. People are displaced from their homes. Properties are burnt and lost and this is happening amongst farmers, it's happening amongst herdsmen. We've had to question whether this is just, you know, a local problem, or whether this has an international face to it, or maybe this is also being fueled from some other areas. So if this is the solution which the governors are proposing, and this is also the vehemence you're getting on some other parts in terms of the language of going to court, do you really think that this is going to bring the proposed peace which this law is supposed to enforce?
Well, in most cases, change doesn't come easily. There are bound to be some resistance. There are bound to be objections and protests from here and there. The Miyetti Allah groups, both the Cattle Breeders Association and the Kautal Hore group, over the years, in my view, have not really engaged critical stakeholders in the area of cattle rearing, with the view to finding solutions to the crisis that have come up over the years. In most cases, what you see is stiff resistance, just as the Kautal Hore group is posing. So instead of engaging stakeholders with the view to finding a holistic solution, they usually take a combative position. it is just of recent that you find the cattle that's Magban engaging with governors, trying to find solution. Like in the case of Lagos, they're pleading for more time to educate their members on how to rear cattle, either in ranching or in reserves or whatever name you call it. But in most cases, you see a stiff resistance, threats, and use of all kinds of foul and uncouth language.
So this is the situation right now in Lagos, where, you know, at least you did admit that you did see Makban there, and they asked for more time. That doesn't seem to have been taken into consideration, given that now the law has been passed. If this is really supposed to bring peace, how do you think enforcement will not cause conflict?
Well, it will depend. The fact that the law will be made anytime soon does not necessarily mean that, how do you put it now, that it can have a transition phase, let's say within a span of 6 months, 10 months, or 1 year. This and this and this will be done. So that will give time for the pastoralist. I mean, that will take into consideration the plea or the request of Magban to give their members opportunity to be acquainted with modern practices of either ranching or being stationed in grazing areas, as it were.
Well, I'm just a little curious. For the states that have passed this anti-open grazing law, how has it been for your members operating in those states? We understand a number of them have had to leave to other states, but if it's going to now happen in the generality of southern states, how is that going to impact the productivity of your members and the businesses? Because some people also say that this is also culture of your members.
And this is the question we always ask. How our members are going to be treated if a law is passed by a particular state? Because we had the bitter experience of Benue. Has the law in Benue solved the problem? Up till today, we have conflict in Benue. So that means the law has not solved the problem. Because the Benue law says anti-open grazing prohibition, and ranching establishment. So two things are involved there: the establishment of ranches and the ban on open grazing. So one must come before the other. So ideally, the ranching establishment has to come first before you enforce. But what we saw in Benue, right from the onset, was the enforcement, was even setting the machinery for the establishment of ranches. So that put us into what we have today in Benue State, crisis after crisis. Farmers and pastoralists losing their lives, losing their properties and everything that they have. For years, IDPs are maintained in Benue. People are not allowed to go and farm. And you know, Benue is a farming state. They depend very much in farming, just like the pastoralists also depend in cattle rearing. So the law is never a win-win situation, as Autumn said when he was implementing the law. He said it is going to be a win-win. Who is winning in Benue today? Are the farmers winning from that law, or the pastoralists? Both of them are suffering. Both of them are losing lives and properties. So the law did not solve the problem. So this is what we are cautioning the other southern governors to understand. Go and appraise the Benue law and see, has it helped in solving the problem? It has not.
There are two states that passed the law at that time, Benue and Ekiti. The situation is not as complex in Ekiti.
It's not complex in Ekiti, because in Ekiti, during the time of 5G, we were there. They understood the dynamics of the crisis. They understood who the pastoralist is. They know that is a person that is not educated and he's practicing the only thing that he knows. So Ekiti, I think, has tried to take into consideration the plights of the pastoralists, like Ogun and Osun. Osun also, even without the law, Osun is peaceful because the governor has done so many things that involves the participation of both farmers and herders and the security agencies in all the local governments. When conflicts arises, there is a committee that always mitigates immediately between the two. So these are the involvements that we always call for, because these pastoralists, whether we like it or not, are Nigerians. They are not foreign pastoralists, they are Nigerians. They move to the southern parts of the country not intentionally to go and stay there, but in search of pasture and water, because all the grazing reserves we have are located in the northern part of the country. About 415 of them are all located in the northern part of the country, covering about 5 million hectares of land. They are all located in the northern part of the country. But the fact that they are not maintained very well, the water is not there, and the palatable grass that the cow consumes is giving way to unpalatable ones because of lack of maintenance of the grazing reserves. Because normally the cows come out hungry from the dry season. So with the second week of rainfall, immediately the new grasses begin to come out. They were forced to go and feast on new grasses, and by feasting on them, they remove them from their roots. So they are not allowing them to drop seeds for next season. So this made the grazing reserve bare. The palatable grasses are giving way to unpalatable ones. The dams that are there are silted. They no longer hold water. So this forced the pastoralists to move in search of water and pasture. That is what took them to the southern part of the country where they can find water. So if those grazing reserves can be developed, we know settlement is the only option. We always say it. Settling the pastoralists is the only option for them to also enjoy, like any other Nigerian, to enjoy the social amenities, to enjoy pump water, to enjoy education, to enjoy electricity. But the way they are living now, they live in the forest, vulnerable place, open for attack by all sorts of things. And they live with the entire family there, with all they have in this world. So you cannot expect a person living with all he has, the cow and everything, the family, everything he has, living in the forest. You cannot expect this guy to go and cause problem for him to be killed or his cow also killed. So, I mean, people should understand the dynamics of this crisis. People should understand the type of pastoralists we have in this country. People will have to understand how they operate as the only thing they know, because there was no attempt by the past administration to try to modernize their trade. So they are doing the only thing that they know.
Let me come to Mr. Atsenwa now, because I see you, Atsen rather, I see you, shaking your head, and I do not know whether it is in terms of what he's saying or is it in terms of the context, because it does seem like in some cases this law has been passed, and as he pointed out, conflict still remains. If you were to advise a governor based on some of the difficulties and perhaps maybe the experiences that we've seen for the states who passed it far earlier on, what were some of the changes? What would you have recommended, saying, as they were passing the law, in order to bring true and lasting peace?
Okay, first, let me correct an impression that Mr. Usman has been making, which is that previous administrations have not taken any steps to change the way of life or the worldview of the pastoralist. In 1989, the government at the time created the National Commission for Nomadic Education. And if you look at the functions of that commission in its establishment law, it provides for a holistic reorientation of the pastoralist. And interestingly, I stand to be corrected, but the commission all along has been headed by people who understand the way of life of the pastoralist. Some of them have passed through that phase and have what it takes to help affect or influence the change in the worldview of the pastoralists, but that hasn't been achieved. You would want to ask, has the commission been funded over the years? What has it done? What are the achievements it has made? What landmarks can we identify as an evidence of its discharging its duties?
So this was not because the Nigerian government didn't see that this could be a potential problem in future when they created that agency. The problem is that, as with most government agencies, it is either underfunded or, attention was shifted away to other issues. So should we hold government responsible for this?
Absolutely. The government has the primary responsibility for the protection of lives and property, for the provision of welfare for the citizens. And a structure was put in place for that purpose by the creation of the commission, but it hasn't lived up to its expectations. And I doubt if it is still doing that. I mean, just look at it in all these conversations. We've not taken into account that particular commission. Interestingly, a particular section of the Act states that the commission could create some kind of a stakeholder committee, some technical committee which involves Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Information, which will liaise with state governments for the purposes of addressing some of the concerns that the members have raised in terms of giving attention to the pastoralists, settling them down in some kind of a ranch or things like that. But how have we achieved that? That was why I talked about organizations like MAGBAN not engaging with state governments productively. In most cases, it's combative. I mean, just look at the interview that was granted by the Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore group. With all that they have said, have they created room for some kind of productive engagement with, let's say, the government of Ondo State? The answer is no.
Let's quickly flip this to my colleague in Lagos. He has questions.
Well, thank you, Mark. Let me begin with Mr. Ngezama, because I get a sense that perhaps there's little understanding between both parties. So, I mean, and I'd like to know if you perhaps appreciate or understand the position of the governors. So you say that, well, they've not taken into consideration the plight of the pastoralists. And for the governors, they say, well, these laws essentially are meant to ensure that there's security, at least a law that defines the rules of engagement, rules of business, essentially. So it's meant to provide security, ensure some decorum or some order in the way the business is conducted, and of course have some form of ramifications when there are infractions. So do you understand or appreciate the position of the state governors? I mean, they are meant to be chief security officers in their state. They're essentially meant to be on top of any situation. And security has been a major issue, especially as a result of those conflicts we've seen between pastoralists and farmers. So I just want to know, do you fully appreciate the position of the state governors, the southern state governors, I should say?
Well, long as they are doing it objectively, we'll have no cause to not to agree with them. But where behind the law is politics, it's not going to provide the solution required. The governors have met, they have voiced out their intentions, and some have even started doing it. If you can follow me some days back, when they started this thing, I called on the northern governors to open discussion with their southern counterparts so that together, because all the pastoralists are supposed to be northerners, coming from the north to the southern part of the country. So if the southern governors are uniting on behalf of their people, why can't the northern governors also come together and discuss with their southern counterparts? Say, hey, these guys, this thing that we have started, this is the way we are going to do it, because you also have your indigenous living in the northern part of the country doing their legitimate business. Cow is not like a merchandise that you can put in a store and lock. Cow is an animal. It's an animal. It needs water and food to survive on a daily basis. So cow is not something that you can lock up and say, it's all right for my merchandise, I will sell it at the time I like. Cow requires attention and feeding. Leaders have responsibilities on animals too, the way they have responsibilities on human beings as well. So this will say the northern governors why didn't they come together with their southern counterparts? After all, they have a forum that is being chaired by the governor of Ekiti State. He is the chairman, Nigerian Governors Forum. Why can't they, under this forum, try to sort out their things so that they could come with something common that can work for both farmers and herders across the country? Something that will create peace once and for all, by understanding the plight and the system of trade of both farmers and herders. I say the dynamics of Nigerian pastoralists are not well understood by the Southern
Mr. Ngezama, I'll still stay with this point of understanding between both parties. So I get a sense that you think that this law is meant to lock up the cattle, because you say cattle cannot be locked up. I'm sure you've looked through those laws. Is there any part that says cattle is meant to be locked up in those laws? I hope you got me, Mr. Ngezama.
So a law banning open grazing is in place now. So what other contingencies do they have for the pastoralists in the interim?
Sorry, forgive me, Mr. Ngezama, just so that we can, forgive me, I didn't quite get your answer from the start. So please, if you could just go over it again so we put this in proper context. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ngezama, can you hear me?
Because both of them, both the farmers and are suffering from it. But if the
audio keeps going back and forth. Help me out here, Mr. Ngezama. Please go ahead with your response.
Hey, do you want?
Let's go ahead.
Tell
now.
me.
I can hear you now. Okay, the question is understanding yet again, which I started with. You say that cattle cannot be locked up. I just want to be clear on that one. Is there any part in the laws across the states that says your cattle should be locked up?
If you come up with a law that bans open grazing, how do you expect the pastoralists to move away with their source of livelihood? How do you expect them to survive in those states? What have you in place for them, at least before the full implementation of this law? They should be confined in a particular area for grazing, at least, for them to understand fully the dynamics of the law before they could venture into it. Whoever refuses to venture into it, a law is there. Penalty.
Okay. So you're saying that the law, pardon me, so you're saying the law does not say lock your cattle up.
Guidelines
forgive me, if I could just come in here. So you're saying that the laws don't say lock the cattle up, but you agree that the laws say at least do some form of ranching, at least put them in a space. So are you against ranching?
What type of ranching?
Ranching is, I mean, I think the definition is quite clear.
Ranching has so many models. What type of ranching?
Okay, so what model
I told you
are
earlier,
you for?
Yeah, I can hear you. You say what?
Yes. I said, what model of ranching? How do you understand ranching?
Models. There's the one that involves the owner getting land, providing his own pasture and water in that land, which is capital intensive. All the pastoralists we have in the country are smallholder farmers who cannot afford the capital intensive system of ranching. But I earlier on spoke about the New Zealand ranching model that involves the development of the entire forest for the pastoralists to continue to live in their local settings, but don't dare go out of that area that is confined as a ranch. Government can do that. Government can begin to even get revenue from this system. Let them convert their forests into these big ranches so that pastoralists will be paying some sort of amount to the government so that they will continue to stay in that forest doing their the only thing that they know. Then gradually, when they understand fully how the modern ranch can be done, then they can gradually begin to acquire their own land, move into the other system of ranching for them to have their land, their few cows that are productive against the ones that they have today. We have a cow that gives an output of 3 liters of milk at most against the ones that we have in the world that are giving 50 liters of milk per cow per day. They still maintain a cow that is weighing not more than 100 or 120 kilograms of weight against the ones that we have in the world that are weighing 500, 600 to 700 kilograms. That give more milk, that give more meat. If they know these things, they will definitely, gradually venture into it. And this will solve their problem. They will not be moving. Their children will go to school. They will enjoy all the other social amenities like any other Nigerian. They will come over this. But this thing has to come as a process. You will not expect today there is a law, tomorrow stop rearing cattle. So where will they go to? What provision have you for them? In the interim, for them to understand the law,
I think the laws are quite clear.
It bans to understand the benefits.
Okay, so I think essentially, maybe at the root of this for me, I think is understanding. Perhaps I might be wrong. And I think the laws are quite clear. The laws are banning open grazing, and that's having cattle on the roads, you know, in residential areas, as we have seen and we continue to see from time to time, and also to not have those cattle cross over into the farmlands of farmers, which has been a root cause of insecurity in a lot of areas. So I think the laws are quite clear on that, but the laws do not ban pastoralists from doing their business. It essentially tries to put up a framework. So from what you say, are you saying that pastoralists do not want to acquire land for ranching, for doing their business?
They will given the right opportunity. I told you most of the pastoralists we have in the country are smallholder farmers. Those 200-300 cows that you see family moving with them belongs to the entire family. If it is going to be shared, nobody will get more than 50 cows as his own. So with 50 cows, how are you going to establish a ranch with 50 cows? It's something that you don't know how to do it, you are not educated on it. How are you going to do it? So all that, well, if the law is about stopping cows from encroaching into farms, from roaming the streets in the cities, it's very good. We're always against this type of things. But let them be confined to a particular area where they will be grazing their cows, not encroaching into people's farmlands. Let these southern governors understand the dynamics of these guys. Let them know that they are also Nigerians. They have their rights and privileges to be protected just like the farmers. Let there be a system that can create understanding. Well, encroachment into farmlands is very wrong, because the farm to the farmer is dear, just like the cow is dear to the owner of the cow. So if you allow your cow to go and make destruction into somebody's farm, we're always against it. Where we get them, we compel them to pay for that damage, because we will not allow this to happen as an association. So
but clearly, it seems
that the law is about stopping these things, then we will have no quarrel with the law at all. But where the law is just like that of Benue State, that was promulgated with the intention, we believe, to chase out pastoralists out of Benue, this is our fears. This is always our fears, because we have seen a law in Benue that has not solved the problem up to today that we speak.
You know, Mr. Ngezama, we've seen policies of government banning, for example, hawking on the major roads. I mean, in Lagos, for example, there have been those policies banning motorcycles, at least a certain grade, from plying certain routes in the state. So we've seen some of those things essentially saying there are other ways to do your business. So for the motorcycles, there's a certain grade of motorcycle you have to get if you want to ply those routes. And I mean, we've seen people switching up, as it were. And for those who couldn't, they just moved away thinking, well, it is a law. I don't want to be caught breaking the law. So I'd like to know squarely now from you, as it stands, for example, with this law that is being developed in Lagos, would your members be abiding by that law?
Are cows supposed to be roaming the street in the cities? No. It's very wrong for cows to stray into somebody's farm deliberately and cause problem, or to be moving in the streets. It's very, very wrong. Let them be confined to a particular area where they will be rearing their cattle. We are against all these kind of things. If the law is about solving this kind of things, then we will have no problem with the law. But our fear is we had our bad experiences about the Benue law, where up till today, it has not solved the problem in Benue. So we fear the other southern governors not to emulate the Benue state law. But if it is a law that is peculiar with their environment, that can confine the pastoralists in a particular area where they will be grazing, get them in their large numbers, begin to improve their skills, begin to teach them how the modernized animal husbandry is being practiced today, then gradually as a process, they will learn. If they learn, I am sure they will not want to waste their time living in the forest with their children and everything, vulnerable area open for attack. They won't do that. They will also want their children to go to school just like any other. I am now here today by the grace of God because I went to school. Destiny brought me to where I am today. If not, I would have been supposed to be rearing my cow in the cattle, my cattle in the forest by now. But destiny, education, my parents put me in the school, so I am here today in channels granting interview. So they all want to do this. How many pastoralist children today are in the offices in Abuja out of the states working as civil servants? Doctors, engineers, mention anything, you find a Fulani man in it. So,
right. So
they all desire for these things. But because this thing that they are practicing is the only thing that they know as a source of livelihood for them to do. Let the southern governors understand this. If the law is about solving, roaming the streets, stressing into farmlands, we are against these things. We don't like them. But
so correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gazama. Are you saying
in the northern part of the country, I'm coming.
Okay, I need to take this to Mr. Atsen very soon, just so we can have a balanced conversation. Pardon me, but are you saying that your members will, your members abiding by this law is conditional? Because you keep saying if. Is it conditional, or you'll go with it pending perhaps some sort of court ruling against it?
The problem with you media, you always want to put something into somebody's mouth. You don't want to be objective. You understood this thing very well, but still you are trying to create something that can give another impression to the public.
Well, Mr. Ngazama, I don't think that is fair, because I asked a yes or no question earlier on.
The interest of our members who are the peaceful ones. We have no business with any criminal in this country.
Okay,
this is an association that has prominent, respected traditional rulers as board of trustees.
I understand, but I don't think that's fair. I essentially asked a straight question.
We fear a situation where our members will be put into an unnecessary prostration and loss, where they will become vulnerable for attack by use, because a guy hiding under a law that is promulgated against open grazing. So next time you see use and some communities beginning to attack pastoralists in those areas. But where it is very clear that there is a law stopping this and that. You pastoralists, for now, you are confined to this particular area to go and stay peacefully. Don't dare stress into somebody's farm. If you do that, this is the penalty. Don't dare roam the street in the cities. If you do that, this is the penalty. We'll come close to the government and help the government in achieving this, because we are not criminals. We are peaceful people. We are civilized. We represent those pastoralists who are peaceful doing their legitimate business. We don't speak for criminals because we are not one. But because our members are everywhere in this country, that is why we always diplomatic in our presentation. We always guide our statements, because we don't want to make statements that will put our members living in those areas into unnecessary troubles. So We always try to create understanding. We always try to be objective in what we are doing. We always try to create understanding so that the governors in those areas can understand that our members are not violent. Our members are there looking for faster for their hearts. If a government can come up with something that can fetch revenue for her, we are not against it. I am from Yobe State. Yobe State has promulgated cattle tax now.
Mr. Gazama, well, I hope you will not say that the media again is cutting you short, but we need to take this back to Mr. Atsen. And I essentially wanted us to leave with a sense that at least we understand your position. So moving forward, we can have at least a well-rounded conversation. But Mr. Atsen, you've been following this conversation, and it will appear to me, at least, that there's some lack of understanding, at least understanding the positions of the parties. So, I mean, the pastoralists have their view of these laws, why these laws are being promulgated, thinking, I mean, there's some political undertone to it and the rest. And the governors, of course, have their views as well. Is there a way around this in law?
Well, just as was stated earlier on, the governors have a responsibility as chief security officers to bring about or make policies that will bring about the peace and order and good governance of their various states. And we have identified open grazing as one of the threats to security in most states of the Federation. But we've not really situated the solution in proper perspective or within its proper context. Now, in the course of discussions here, it was established that there are grazing areas up north, even though some of them are forest reserves, which are misconstrued to be grazing areas. But yes, there are grazing reserves which have been abandoned, which are in the state of decay. Now, what we should be agitating our minds on is how to revive these areas as the president has directed and settle some of these pastoralists there. If you look at the map of Nigeria, there's more space up north than down south. As you go down southward, the maps keep shrinking. Land is more scarce downward than upward. So why can't we take advantage of these resources that we have up north, rehabilitate these areas? The cattle have used or grazed on the areas up north, and they have moved down south without doing much more. I mean, we're going to have a repeat in the south, what we now have in the north. Because with time, they will overgraze and finish all the forest. And some of these forests are protected resources. So maybe instead of hammering on southern governors, pushing all the responsibilities and blame on them, focus should be made on the northern governors, on the northern states. You have a responsibility. You're more affiliated to this, most of the pastoralists that will be affected culturally and in so many ways. So they should be charged to rise up to their responsibilities and provide all these structures so that some of these concerns will be addressed. I mean, Magban in Lagos made a statement to the effect that if this law is put in place, that the cost of a cow will get up to about 2 million naira or so. I mean, that is business. If I, as a state governor, let's say in Kaduna or Katsina State, invest money in creating a grazing area, I should be able to charge some kind of tax or something before a cow will be moved from my state to, let's say, Ebonyi State or Ogun State. So if that will come to 1 million per cow, in my mind, it's better than the lives that are being lost on a daily basis, destruction of properties, and lack of harmony. I mean, right now, as we talk, we didn't talk about the banditry that has crippled activities completely in states like Katsina and Zamfara. All this started as a result of cattle rustling, clashes with farmers, you know, and all those things. That was how it started. But today we have a security threat that is, as we speak, much more than Boko Haram threats as far as banditry, terrorism basically is concerned. You know, so we need to look at these issues from the foundations instead of touching on its branches.
Just to say also that we did invite a member of the Lagos State House of Assembly, but he wasn't able to make it to the program. And it's to give a perspective into the thinking of the Lagos State government in terms of their passage and also perhaps explain how they intend to cover the challenges faced by the cattle breeders who will be most affected by the law which has just been passed in Lagos. But gentlemen, I don't know if we still have time for closing words. It looks like we're totally out of time. But I want to ask, because you have said that if this was just about restricting movement to a certain area and not, prohibiting people from, especially the cattle, from coming into the city, that it would have been more understandable. Someone would say that in Abuja, for instance, the FCT, which is especially in the heart of the FCT, we still see cattle roaming around. I mean, what is the engagement like with your members when it comes to, the herding of cattle within the city center?
Those cattle that you see in the city center belongs to the big men in this town. They do not belong to the pastoralists, because we have been working with FCT for years to stop these things. And whenever we caught a pastoralist moving with his cow within Abuja, we ensure that there's a penalty on him. We don't allow this. We have been working with FCT for so long on this. But those that you see roaming the wild, still in the city, they live in the city. They belong to some big men here in this city, not the pastoralists. But they hire the services of the pastoralists to go rear, come back to the house and lock them up.
So sometimes it's not about the resources really, because if they are big men, they should be able to afford ranches. It's sometimes about impunity.
Oh yes, I am with you on this. Oh yes, but my call on the southern governors, they can use this to turn it as a revenue venture. Like I started saying, in Yobe State, we have introduced cattle tax. And this cattle tax will help the Yobe State government in so many things, because it will help in checking incoming foreign pastoralists, distinguishing them from the residence ones from the incoming ones. It will also help in boosting the revenue of the local governments and the state government. It will help in checking the activities of herders. It will also help in confining them in a particular area, so that when there is a farm destruction, you know which family is responsible for destroying whose farm. Then get him pay, impose penalty on him. So the southern governors, we are not blaming the southern governors for this, but all we are saying, there has to be understanding. Let them know the dynamics of this pastoralists, so that they could come up with something that can work for all of us. They can turn this into a revenue venture. They can do it. And the pastoralists will be willing to pay. If you will confine them to a particular area, give them water, there is grass, tell them, we are going to charge you this, they will stay. And it is only and only when you get them in their large numbers, then you begin to also teach them other skills, educate them on the modernized system of animal husbandry. So even in the northern part of the country today, where we have all these grazing reserves, I am telling you, today we have about 80% of the arable land in this country that is still free.
So something
for grazing. So I see no reason why we should be quarreling and fighting on something that we can solve. We have enough land, we have the resources, the pastoralists are there, livestock, if it can be put in the right place, it will help in even boosting the revenue of the federal government. So why can't we do something that can help the government of both North and the South? We are not against all these things. Once it is done in good faith, where our members will be protected, they will be confined to a particular area. What is our problem?
Big question, Mr. Usman Ngezama. I know that this conversation will certainly continue. The bill has not been signed, or the law has not yet been signed into law. I don't know what stage, when it has been passed. What stage is it at before it is signed? It's still a bill, is it?
It is still a bill.
Okay, but it's been passed by the Lagos State House of Assembly, awaiting assent of the Lagos State Governor. We'll see how that conversation is extended when the bill is eventually signed into law. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Bolos Atsen is the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association here in Abuja, and Usman Baba Ngezama is the national secretary, Miyetti Ala Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Lagos State, ẹ kú fọmọnìyàn ṣe. Gbogbo aṣòfin ìlú Èkó, mo kí yín, ẹ kú ìfi ọmọ akin hàn. Fúlàní ò lè délùú wa kí wọ́n máa wá halẹ̀ mọ́ wa. Wọ́n ò lè délùú wa kí wọ́n máa wá dúnkokò mọ́ wa. Ìbuwọ́lù bí wọ́n ti buwọ́lù òfin yìí, òun náà láti rí lágbára Ọlọ́run láti àná. Ó ti dòfin o. Fúlàní kí Fúlàní kankan kò gbọ́dọ̀ kó ẹran jẹ káàkiri láàrin oko tàbí láàrin ìgboro nílùú Èkó. Ogun state náà ń bọ̀ láìpẹ́, bẹ́ẹ̀ náà l'Ọ̀yọ́ state náà follow suit láìpẹ́ yìí. Gbogbo wọn làwọn àbá yìí ti wà ní House of Assembly wọn nílé ìgbìmọ̀ aṣòfin. Mo fi àsìkò yìí kí ọ̀gbẹ́ni Ṣòwòrẹ́, torí pé lánàá ó ní wọ́n ṣe ètò ìsìnkú àbúrò rẹ̀. Tá a bá gbàgbé, níjọ́ Monday ó ní wọ́n announce ikú ọ̀gbẹ́ni Ṣòwòrẹ́. Ìyẹn ni pé àbúrò Ṣòwòrẹ́ tí gbogbo wa tá a mọ̀ sí Revolution Now, tí wọ́n ń ṣe agbátẹrù Revolution Now. Wọ́n sin òkú àbúrò rẹ̀ lánàá. Wọ́n ṣe lying state fún àbúrò rẹ̀ lánàá. Ẹ jẹ́ ká wo bí iṣu ṣe bẹ́ àti bí iṣu ṣe kú àti bọ́bẹ̀ ṣe bẹ́ lánàá ní ìlú àwọn Ṣòwòrẹ́. Mò ń padà bọ̀.
This country, so that they can tomorrow come and fight back. Those who have stood for justice, those who have been there, those working for the betterment of this country, are being victimized. Sunday Igboho is somewhere now languishing. Everybody in this country that has stood for justice in this country, they are being victimized and being criminalized. To this end, I want to say that justice in this country, we must do everything to pursue it. We have been, the blood of my brother has been stained for this cause, and by the grace of God, we shall ask God to give us the fortitude to bear it and to continue. We are using this opportunity to thank everybody who has come from both far and near to come and grace this occasion, despite the security risk everywhere. It's a big sacrifice that everybody has made to grace this occasion. Once again, I want to say that my brother today will have come here to bury his brother in line with our cultural rights as people of our point. But today the federal government deliberately kept him there. We are with nobody now. We are, as we are in this country now, we are like orphans. We don't have anybody to cater for us. This brother who was there, who has been helping, who has been holding forth for his senior brother, who is currently in captivity, now he was killed. I am here now helpless. I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. But my Lord Bishop and Reverend, I seek for intervention in Christendom. Thank everybody and God bless you.
My brother, I feel my for you. On behalf of Revolution Now, àti our members the African Action Congress. For you ní èdè wa jáde understand díẹ̀ tó máa tún kọ òyìnbó. Reason ni pé ó yẹ kí tẹ̀fẹ̀ ẹja àkọ́kọ́ mọ́. Torí yé ṣẹlẹ̀ yé ṣàwọn àdùkà ẹsẹ̀lẹ̀ kò ṣe gbèrà ti fọ yìí. ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ òdìdí Nàìjíríà ni yí àwa dẹ̀ gbé jáde àfọ̀gbéjà afẹ́ ìjàgbara péjú dédé wa láti north látó south jàkówó jọ dédé ohun ayé fa wàhálà yìí yàyọkù through surgical revolution ní our more peaceful Buhari example yẹn severally ṣùgbọ́n àwọn ayé jẹ́ olórí wa of the federal government and the state government à ń fẹ́ ogun ìfẹ́ ìjàngbara n yóò fa yabari recently today was our white wife article 9 a whole bus with about 18 people in this same state. So why we are here, why we have been clamoring for revolution now, and why they are keeping Sowore victimized, why they are victimizing the whole of Nigerians, is because the Nigerian ruling class, they have been swimming in blood for a very long time. The Nigerian ruling class, they have stolen all the wealth of this country dry. The Nigerian ruling class, they have taken away all the jobs that used to be in this country. In Ondo South before, we have Otubaoba PLC, we have Oluwa Glass Company. All of these companies were killed consciously so that you and I will not have any jobs. And what is left to be done when there are no jobs? This is the result of what we are seeing today. Many of all of these persons, all of the crisis in this country, the Nigerian ruling class are happy about it. So I am imploring everybody that this is a proverb to all of us. To the Christian families, to the Muslim families, to the Christian leaders, to the Muslim leaders, and for some of us who are traditional, all of us should unite together. All of us. This is what this is telling us. This is a proverb that all of us must understand. We must unite from north to south in every nooks and corners of this country. We must hold ourselves still, because those who want war in this country are one and the same. Across all their parties, they have failed severally, and they will continue to fail. So we are bringing condolence from the African Action Congress and the Revolution now. We are also saying that all Nigerians should unite once and for all and resolve all of these debacles. I say,
what about brother? What is
tó ẹ káàbọ̀ padà. Jídé Sowore òun lè rí bí wọ́n ti ṣètò ìsìnkú rẹ̀ yìí. Àwa bẹ̀ Elédùmarè wípé gbogbo ẹni tó fi sílẹ̀, ìyá ni bàbá ni ẹ̀gbọ́n ni, kí Olódùmarè kó bá wa rọ̀ wọ́n lójú. Tó oníyanṣẹ́ ọlọ́kàṣe, ẹ̀yin tí ẹ bá wa fìfẹ́ jẹ oúnjẹ tòní, gbogbo yín náà la dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀. Lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí ẹ jẹ́ kí n bẹ̀ yín wípé àbí ẹ jẹ́ kí n fi tó yín létí wípé kájọ kọ́mọ lùbọ́ ni tó dáa. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ń wá wo fídíò wa tẹ́ sì ń lọ bẹ́ẹ̀, ẹ ṣe bá wa buwọ́ lu bí tí wọ́n kọ subscribe sí. Subscribe túmọ̀ sí pé ẹ darapọ̀ mọ́ wọn. Tẹ́ bá tẹ̀ ní ìsìn, tẹ́ sì tẹ aago, àmì aago tó wà ńbẹ̀ yẹn, ìyẹn náà pè ní notification bell. Anytime ní gbogbo ìgbà tí n bá ti gbé fídíò síta, gbogbo fídíò yìí ni wọ́n máa gbé wá fún yín wípé Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ ti jáde o. Ẹ sì lọ wò ó. Irú tẹ́yìn èèyàn fi fóònù pè mí, bàbá Gbàgede kí ni latest, ẹ ní nídìí kẹ́ máa fi fóònù pè mí mọ́. Ẹ jẹ́ àjọ kọ́mọ lùbọ̀, ẹ wo bí tí wọ́n kọ subscribe sí, kẹ́yìn náà tẹ̀. Bákan náà ni pé ṣé ẹ gbàgbé nǹkan tá a sọ, ìbọwọ́ lu ètò yìí, ìsubscribe fún wa, yàtọ̀ fún prógráàmù tèmi nìkan tẹ́ ń wò. Lágbára Ọlọ́run láti ọ̀sẹ̀ tó ń bọ̀ lọ, oríṣiríṣi lẹ́ máa wò nínú ètò Bàbá Gbàgede Live àbí Bàbá Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, torí wípé a ti sọ channel yìí di online TV. Oríṣiríṣi ètò láti làálẹ̀, ẹ máa wo oríṣiríṣi àṣà àti ṣe, ètò ìròyìn, ẹ máa wo ètò ìdárayá tá mọ̀ sí sport, ẹ máa wo ohun tá a pè ní cosmetics bọ́n ṣe ń pètè kún gbogbo ẹ máa wo health, ìlera, ètò lórí ìlera. Kí ni wọ́n forógbó ṣe, kí ni wọ́n fi lè ṣe, àwọn nǹkan tá à ń rí bí ewébẹ̀ tá à ń jẹ iṣẹ́ wo ló tún ṣe lára gbogbo nǹkan yìí á sì máa gba àlejò. Bákan náà ni pé àwọn lọ́ba ládéládé a fẹ́ lọ máa bá wọn àtàwọn lórúkọ nílẹ̀ Yorùbá á lọ máa bá wọn, wọ́n máa sọ fún wa kí làwọn náà rí sí n tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ nílẹ̀ Yorùbá. Ìbuwọ́lù ètò yìí ó máa tó yàtọ̀ o, torí pé àǹfààní tó pọ̀ wà ń bẹ. Ẹ ṣe buwọ́lù kẹ́yìn náà lè jẹ àwọn àǹfààní tá a ti lélẹ̀ rẹpẹtẹ yìí. Tó ojú tẹ́ fi wò mí ò ní fọ́ o, etí tẹ́ sì fi ń gbọ́ mi ò ní di. Èmi ọmọ yín àbúrò yín Aláwìyé Adébáyọ̀ Sàbúrì ọmọ bàbá tíṣà lábẹ́òkúta, bàbá gbàgede ìmọ̀ náà ló sọ fún wa pé láyọ̀ o.